Leo didn't bother hiring a professional for the design of the blockhead workshop. He took it on himself, hashing it out with Claire. Their roommates from both dorms were more than happy to help, offering a flood of enthusiastic suggestions. Leo and Claire dutifully sifted through the ideas, separating the wheat from the chaff. There was a proposal for a date cake snack corner, a dedicated space for hitting on girls, a lending library of romance novels for customers to relax with. Okay, it was all chaff. Not a single grain of wheat in the entire pile. In the end, it was up to the couple to figure out themselves. But a small task like this was hardly a challenge for the legendary Reasonable Lethal and Savage Trouble Magnet couple. They were both reborn. They had a wealth of experience and case studies from their past lives to draw upon. A quick search of their mental databases yielded countless mature design concepts that were functionally and aesthetically light years ahead of anything from 2008. They wandered through the empty shop space, talking as they went. One idea sparked another, and once their creative synergy kicked in, they had a basic design plan locked down in no time. It was surprisingly simple and smooth. After they finished, they both paused, a flicker of confusion passing between them as they exchanged a look. As someone who's lived this life before, it's perfectly reasonable for me to have so many futuristic ideas, they each thought. But how does my boyfriend/girlfriend also have so many brilliant designs? What are you reborn to? The thought vanished as quickly as it came. They each immediately arrived at a far more logical conclusion. They must have gotten smarter from dating me for so long. Satisfied, they both nodded in agreement with their internal logic. Reasonable. With the design plan finalized, the actual construction was handed over to Uncle 16, the contact for Mr. Chien. The Gilded Phoenix family was nothing if not reliable. The first time they met, Uncle 16 showed up looking every bit the part of a boisterous contractor, leading his crew into the workshop. He was a man of about 50, with a rough but cheerful disposition. Before he even bothered with introductions, his eyes lit up as he saw Leo and Claire. "Well, I'll be," he boomed. "Damn, you two kids look perfect together. Where's the wedding going to be?" He immediately thrust a business card at them. "Remember to call me when you get married." 16's contracting and design is top-notch when it comes to wedding venues, too. The Gilded Phoenix family. The shipping gene ran deep in their blood. After hearing Leo and Claire's design plan, Uncle 16 started hollering at his crew to begin taking measurements. He then turned back to the couple, slapped his chest, and made a solemn vow. 2 storefronts, a little over 1,000 square feet combined. "My boys work fast. We'll have this done for you in 2 weeks tops. Quality guaranteed. If you're not satisfied, I'll have my nephew 6 give you both shops, free of charge." The offer made Leo and Claire stifle a laugh. "Well, that's not really HM." A sudden realization dawned on them. They exchanged a look, their expressions perfectly neutral as they seamlessly changed their tune. A bad idea at all. The renovation of the blockhead workshop kicked off with a bang. On the first day, Uncle 16, a man of tradition, set off a string of loud firecrackers at the entrance. He even produced a small statue of a bodhisattva he'd gotten from somewhere, lighting incense and praying before it. He swore it was the patron saint of construction, guaranteeing a smooth start and booming business. Whether the bodhisattva himself was aware of this new title was anyone's guess. Uncle 16, however, was adamant. "Guaranteed to work," he declared. "My nephew, Seijin, he's a monk now. Before he joined a monastery, he was the smartest kid in our whole family. Knows all about this spiritual stuff. I hear he's the right-hand man to the head abbot at his temple. The abbot relies on him for everything. Can't go a day without him." Leo and Claire just went along with it. A little good luck ceremony before starting work. Perfectly harmless. The firecrackers were loud enough to attract a crowd of curious Berkeley students. When they found out the campus's infamous lethal and savage couple was opening a shop, they were taken aback. A shop. Their first reaction was suspicion. Are they just want to sell PDA? Guess we'll have to avoid this area from now on. The couple and their roommates had to repeatedly clarify. It's not a PDA shop. It has nothing to do with pets. It's a workshop for custom figurines, kind of like one of those DIY pottery studios. We'll be open in about 2 weeks. You can bring your girlfriend for a cute couples activity. Oh, you don't have a girlfriend? Do you just stay home all day reading those romance web novels then? That's not important. The point is, there'll be plenty of pretty girls here. If you're single, you might just meet someone. And cute guys. Plenty of those, too. You might even find a certain third-generation heir to a D.C. dynasty working here part-time. A whole billionaire falls for you scenario isn't out of the question. The pitch was enough to pique the interest of many of the students. Leo and the others immediately handed out the flyers they'd prepared. By noon, Even as the renovation was just getting started, they had already distributed a thick stack of them. The buzz had officially begun. That afternoon, the two dorm crews gathered for lunch at a small diner near the East Gate. The conversation buzzed with excitement about the workshop's future. Quinn, in a move of pure, accidental coincidence, picked up a chicken wing and casually dropped it into Marco's bowl beside her. Then, as if nothing had happened, she raised a question. "By the way," she said, "if the renovation is done in 2 weeks and we're ready to open, don't we need to start hiring staff?" The others, who had just started to register Quinn's maneuver with the chicken wing, were immediately distracted by her question. They all nodded. "That's true. We'll need quite a few people, right? Cashier, cleaning, logistics, management. There's a lot to do. Mainly, if we get busy, we'll need staff who can teach customers how to design and create their figurines, like the instructors at that pottery place in the historic town." A rough calculation suggested that once the workshop was open, they would need at least 5 or 6 permanent staff members, from manager to employees. Leo and Claire's plan was to hire from the Berkeley student body, but they, along with their roommates, were all sophomores now with demanding class schedules. Even with extra help from people like Lily Liu and Yvonne Moreau, they could only pitch in occasionally. There weren't many juniors or seniors on the old campus, as most of their classes were at the new campus. So, the best option was clear. They needed to hire freshmen whose schedules were more flexible and have them work in shifts. The problem was, while freshmen had lighter course loads, they were also the most eager to join clubs, which took up a lot of their free time. Molly summed it up. "So, we need to find people who are hardworking, reliable, and preferably already know you and Claire, so they're easy to work with. And they can't have joined any clubs, so they have plenty of free time." She paused. "Wow, that's a pretty strict set of requirements, isn't it?" Leo and Claire, however, looked thoughtful. They exchanged a glance. A candidate like that isn't impossible to find. Simple, honest, hardworking, and reliable. Preferably on good terms with the owners, making them easy to manage. And with plenty of free time, having not joined any student clubs. The requirements were indeed strict. After hearing Leo and Claire's description, their roommates were skeptical. "Does someone like that actually exist?" To which the lethal and savage couple replied, "They do. They do, my friends. And there are 10 of them." That evening, at the familiar all-you-can-eat Korean barbecue place by the East Gate, Leo and Claire pushed through the curtained entrance and made their way to a table in the corner. 6 guys and 4 girls, 10 freshmen from Northwood High, their direct underclassmen, were already seated, waiting obediently. When they saw their upperclassmen arrive, they immediately broke into excited waves. "Leo, Claire, over here, over here." They still had that same adorably naive, endearingly clueless look about them. Leo and Claire exchanged a glance, a gratified smile on their faces. It was a perfect match. Simple, honest, hardworking, and reliable. Good kid from Northwood High. The same ones they had tricked into playtesting the Battle Through the Heavens browser game over the summer. They were a joy to work with. And as their direct underclassmen, the relationship was already familiar and close. Best of all, while most freshmen were rushing to join various clubs, the kids from Northwood had no such problem. Why? Because nearly every single club on campus had members of the anti-Northwood High cult. Joining a club was like walking into a lion's den. For their own safety, every last one of them had wisely dropped out within the first week. And just like that, they perfectly fulfilled every single requirement for a job at the Blockhead Workshop. Leo and Claire sat down at the table, starting with friendly inquiries about the freshmen's recent studies and campus life. The group chattered excitedly, eager to share their experiences. Their classes were going well. The freshman workload was still pretty light. The only thing lacking was their social life. Most of their energy was spent staying incognito and dodging the campus-wide manhunt. It was dull, but also kind of thrilling. College felt less like higher education and more like espionage. "It's exciting, I guess," said one of the boys, a freshman named Alex Zhang, with a hint of regret. "But we'd really like to join a club or do some other fun activities." The others nodded in agreement. Leo and Claire exchanged another look. Then, with perfectly straight faces, they began. "Well, if that's the case, we happen to have an interesting project going on right now. If you're not busy, you could come and give us a hand." As Leo and Claire explained the basics of the Blockhead Workshop, the freshmen's eyes lit up. A figurine workshop, like for DIY pottery, and the shop is right by the East Gate. That sounds so cool. They eagerly agreed on the spot. As for pay, they insisted Leo and Claire could just give them whatever they thought was fair. They'd even do it for free. The main thing was that they were bored to death after months of being unable to join any clubs. Working at their upperclassmen's workshop would be a great extracurricular activity. Alex Zhang leaned in conspiratorially. Leo, he whispered, I have an idea. Most of the freshman guys in my major are single. They don't really have a reason to come to a DIY workshop. But you know Yvonne Moreau, the freshman at GUR, right? If you could get her to hang out at the shop sometimes, I guarantee you'd get every guy from the humanities department at least. Leo's eyes brightened. He stroked his chin thoughtfully. And what if I also know Isabella Zhao, Lily Liu, and could get 3 or 5 more campus beauties of that caliber to show up? Alex Zhang slammed his hand on the table, his voice firm. Then, the Blockhead Workshop will become the #1 must-visit spot for every guy at Berkeley. Leo looked at Alex with pure admiration. A true talent. He clapped him on the shoulder. Keep up the good work. I'll make you a full-time employee. Mako Entertainment still needs a marketing department. This kid has potential. Across from the Berkeley Old Campus, the renovation of the Blockhead Workshop was in full swing. At the same time, on the national internet, the promotional campaign for Nexus's new microblogging platform was also heating up. That Friday, Nexus and Happiness released a second joint official announcement. This time, they detailed the friendly, integrated partnership between the two social media platforms across various functional areas. The Nexus platform opened its channels, integrating Happiness original mini-games and apps like the Name Compatibility Test and Brainiac Blitz. They then used their own registered users to launch another round of promotion and user redirection. This not only increased user engagement, but also boosted the Nexus platform's registration numbers to another level. Before the weekend, it broke the 110 million user mark. That afternoon, after his classes at the new campus, Leo stopped by the Happiness headquarters. As soon as he reached the second floor, he saw Hannah Ling, dressed in a pencil skirt and a sharp blazer, clicking towards him on high heels with a folder in her hands. The star of Happiness had now been appointed the company's press spokesperson. She had just represented Happiness at the joint press conference with Nexus that morning. Right now, her hair was tied back in a neat, professional bun, giving her a powerful, executive woman vibe. But she had just returned from the conference, and the exhaustion under her polished exterior was palpable. She immediately sank onto a nearby sofa, letting out a satisfied sigh as she leaned back. Leo saw her and greeted her with a smile. Nice work, our star spokesperson. Hannah casually crossed her legs, one high heel dangling from her toes as she swung it back and forth. She gave him a lazy wave. Nice work is right, she purred. You're Leo, right? Come give your big sister Hannah a shoulder rub. Her voice was languid, laced with a captivating charm. Leo nodded readily. Sure, I was going to give you a bonus as a reward, but if you'd rather have a massage instead, that works too. Before he could finish, Hannah shot up from the sofa like a rocket, scurrying over to him with a fawning smile. Oh, boss, I was just kidding. I want the bonus. Are you tired, boss? Why don't you sit down and let me give you a massage? As expected of the company spokesperson. Her face could change in an instant. Leo was there on business, so in the end, he didn't get to enjoy Hannah's massage services. He pushed open the door to the CEO's office and found David Chung sitting at his desk, sighing dramatically. Leo asked what was wrong, and David launched into a litany of complaints. That old fox Carlson is learning our tricks way too fast. Nexus's resources are just on another level. I knew we shouldn't have handed over the version 3.0 platform strategy so early. Now, they've taken our model and run with it. Sure, their platform's tone is different from ours, but they've still siphoned off a ton of our users. Leo nodded. We're partners, but we're also competitors. Something like this was bound to happen. We can't go head-to-head with them where they're strong. We need to play to our own platform strengths and cultivate more loyal users. David frowned. Our strengths? You mean making more little games like Parking Wars and Friend Trader? Those are getting repetitive, and users are starting to get tired of them. Leo waved his hand. Of course not. At this stage of Happiness development, those little games don't directly benefit our core social media platform. What I'm talking about is something that will add some serious fuel to Happiness fire. Once we roll it out, it will elevate our platform's functionality and interactivity by at least 2 levels. The speech had completely hooked David. Then, Leo suddenly stopped. He leisurely sat down and began to brew himself some tea. David waited. He watched with mounting impatience as his own CSO calmly prepared the tea. David waited some more. Leo took a sip from his cup, smacked his lips, then poured out the first steep and refilled it. David's face went blank as he began to roll up his sleeves. In case you didn't know, I've been picking up a few moves from Shunshur in the security department. Seeing that his CEO was about to lose it, Leo dropped the act. He coughed, set down his teacup, and finally gave him the answer. Except it wasn't an answer. It was a question. Have you ever heard of a rating system? David froze. A rating system? Leo had anticipated the problem David Chung mentioned. When an internet giant like Nexus entered the social media space, it was bound to create a massive shockwave for everyone else. Sure, Nexus and Happy Nest had a partnership, and Nexus wasn't deliberately poaching their user base. But the sheer scale of Nexus meant that once their new platform took off, it would naturally attract users from all over the country. Integrating Happy Nest features was also part of the deal. They weren't maliciously stealing users. It was the users themselves who were choosing to switch. Could you really blame Nexus for that? It was like a classic line from a 1990 TV sketch comedy. You can control me, but can you control who the audience wants to watch? The same applied here. You can control me, but can you control which platform the users want to use? Ultimately, it all stemmed from Leo's decision to package the future Weibo platform strategy with the domain name when he sold it to Nexus. Of course, it wasn't a loss for him personally. He'd made a solid one, $2 million, and secured a 5% stake in the new venture. You could say he made out like a bandit. But even though Leo was now the largest individual shareholder of the new platform outside of Nexus itself, his roots were still with Happy Nest. He and David had worked well together for over half a year. He couldn't just screw the guy over. Okay, so maybe I've screwed him over a few times already. But this is the last time, I swear. This time, even though he had handed over the 3-0 strategy to Carl Carlson, Leo had prepared a backup plan. Just as he'd told David, don't fight your opponent on their turf. Find common ground, but also create differentiation. Play to Happy Nest's unique strengths, setting it apart from Nexus and from every other competitor out there. The rating system was the ace he'd kept up his sleeve for Happy Nest. What exactly was a rating system? It was Leo's adaptation of a few of the most popular apps from the future smartphone era, a combination of Yelp, Instagram, and ESPN's forums. In late 2008, smartphones hadn't taken off yet, so none of those apps existed. But that didn't stop Leo from streamlining and modifying their core concepts to fit Happy Nest's social platform. To create a unique identity, Leo's vision for Happy Nest was to be centered on real life. He wouldn't follow Nexus's top-down model of influencers and followers. Instead, he would pursue a populist, lifestyle-oriented path. By opening up a rating function, they would first guide businesses to create profiles on the platform. Users could then rate the places they visited, sharing recommendations or warnings with others. This could start with restaurants and cafes. Second, borrowing from the Instagram model, they would encourage female users to share their outfits, accessories, and makeup tips. The beauties who received high ratings would then share their secrets with their followers, creating a positive feedback loop. Leo had even thought of the slogan already, Happy Nest. Share your life. David Chung, sitting on the sofa opposite him, was stunned. When he finally processed it, his expression was one of pure awe. Brilliant. That slogan is perfect. It instantly sets us apart from the competition. How does your brain even come up with this stuff? Leo replied with a straight face. Just a flash of inspiration, I guess. In reality, it was another borrowed slogan, this time from the future TikTok. Adapt. Everything can be adapted. But that wasn't all. If the Yelp and Instagram rating models were primarily for female users, then the final component was aimed squarely at the male demographic. In his past life, the Hupu forum's rating system was legendary for its objective, unbiased, world-class fairness, which is to say, it was utter chaos. It started with ranking female celebrities, then expanded to sports like the NBA and the World Cup, and later to esports, novels, public figures, social events, basically everything. It didn't matter what it was. It could be rated. It perfectly satisfied the user's deep-seated psychological need to point fingers and pass judgment on everything under the sun. The two campus all-stars contests we ran, the campus beauty pageants, they were basically the same idea, Leo explained to David. But with a dedicated rating system, we can cover more ground and be more direct and specific. We're giving users a place to vent, to complain, to voice their opinions. Of course, that was the high-minded way of putting it. In simpler terms, it was a paradise for trash-talking gamers. David was growing more and more intrigued. So you can rate anything? That's interesting. Does that mean I can be rated too? An idea struck him, and he looked expectantly at his CSO. If you were to rate me, what score do you think I'd get? Leo looked David over. You're a 3. David, his fists suddenly started to feel heavy again. Sensing danger, Leo quickly backtracked. 3 parts handsome, 3 parts coolly detached, 3 parts talented, and 1 part nonchalant, which in summary is a perfect 10. David was finally satisfied, placing the broom he had just picked up back in the corner. That's more like it. You should learn to speak in complete sentences. Saying only half of what you mean can cause misunderstandings. Leo nodded profusely. Right. He glanced warily at the broom. I need to get all the dangerous objects removed from the CEO's office. David's temper is getting worse and worse these days. Happy Nest was highly efficient now. Leo proposed the rating system idea to David on Friday. Over the weekend, the project and programming teams worked overtime and managed to create a beta version. They first rolled it out for an internal company trial. It was an immediate, resounding success with all the employees. Many of the female staff members were instantly hooked, sharing recommendations for restaurants and posting before and after photos of makeup products, begging their colleagues to rate their posts. Such was the charm of the Yelp/Instagram model. The male employees, while less interested in that, quickly became addicted to the rate everything model borrowed from Hoopoo. They were completely engrossed, uploading all sorts of rating categories and topics, and inviting their colleagues and even superiors to join the fun. For example, the Happy Nest internal goddess ranking. Many of the pretty women from the marketing and reception departments made the list, but their scores were mostly between 6 and 7. The men were tough critics. Hannah Ling, now the company spokesperson, received a consensus rating of 8.1, but even that high score was only good enough for second place. The number 1 spot was in a league of its own, miles ahead of the competition. 9. The boss's wife. To the outside world, the most mysterious figure at Happy Nest was its low-profile CISO. But for the employees, seeing their young boss show up for a meeting, only to end up in a high-stakes chase scene with the CEO, had become a familiar sight. They were far more interested in the boss's wife, the esteemed lady of the company, and were dying to see her in person. Unfortunately, Leo, ever protective, had never brought his girlfriend to the Happy Nest headquarters. The most anyone had seen of her was at the Comic-Con, where a lucky few had caught a glimpse of her at the company booth. They were instantly smitten. They rushed back and told their colleagues all about her, exaggerating with every breath until she sounded like a goddess descended from heaven. At first, the other employees were skeptical, but then they all saw that viral photo of the Aragorn and Arwen cosplayers. In that moment, they too became devout followers of the boss's wife, worshipping the woman they knew only as Bertha Sue. Leo just laughed off the internal company poll, not paying it much mind. It was just a beta test, after all. They could hide that particular ranking when it went public. Still, he couldn't resist scrolling through the data with a flicker of interest. As per his instructions, the rating system allowed users to upload their own entries and subjects. The scale was 1 to 5 stars, and there was a comment section below for specific feedback. The most liked comments were automatically pinned to the top as featured tags. He glanced at some of the higher-rated female employees on the list. Cheryl Chun, 6.3. Featured comment. I gave her 4 stars, but just so everyone knows, she bribed me with snacks. Joe and Joe, 6.9. 1/2 featured comment. Marketing department beauty. Her short hair is to die for. Short hair is justice. The comments were all over the place. Leo couldn't help but chuckle. The system allowed for anonymous posting, but the employees were all decent enough that even their anonymous comments weren't malicious. They were just having fun, and it was genuinely entertaining. He found Hannah Ling's rating. Hannah Ling, 8.1. Featured comment. Hottest girl in the company, plus half a point for being the press spokesperson. Featured comment. She could have gotten another half point, but she's too fierce. Minus that. Featured comment. Seconded. Plus 1 to the comment above. Hannah herself must have seen the comments. She was fuming in the company AIM chat. Who said I'm fierce? And all of you who plus 1 foot D that. You better hope I don't find out who you are. You're all dead. Leo laughed again. A rating system was supposed to be for fun. If you made the list, you had to have a thick skin. You couldn't go hunting down anonymous users. Hannah is still too young, he thought. She needs to learn a thing or two from me about being magnanimous. The next second, he saw his girlfriend at the top of the list, leading by a mile. The boss's wife, 9.9. Featured comment. Unbeatable. A literal angel. The boss's wife is amazing. Featured comment. -0.1 because she's not single. Featured comment. If she were single, it'd be 100. 100. A group of audacious, death-defying anonymous employees had liked that last comment. Leo's smile froze. He decided then and there. He was going to have a nice, long chat with the head of the tech department. Find out who these people were. Once he had their names, he docked their pay tomorrow for the crime of entering the office with their left foot first. The absolute nerve. The internal beta test was a huge success, but Leo told David Chung not to rush the public launch. First, they needed to refine the system's logic to perfection. For instance, They had to reduce the weight of mindless one-star review bombs to ensure the scores were as fair and objective as possible. Second, they needed to assemble a content moderation team. This was to prevent the platform from being flooded with toxic comments after the feature went live, which would pollute the community environment. When he was on the phone with David discussing these details, David readily agreed, full of ambition. No problem. We'll get everything prepared before the launch. This is our secret weapon. It has to make a huge splash. Before hanging up, Leo heard him shout across his office, "Get the head of tech in here. I need him to find out which anonymous bastards gave me a 1-star rating. The absolute nerve." The two founders of Happy Nest, the twin stars of light and darkness. Their magnanimity was one and the same. That weekend, for once, there was no group dinner at the LNS house. Everyone had their own plans. Jade was heading to the library to study. The valedictorian queen had apparently found a new research topic that fascinated her. Molly and Leon, the novel girl and the date cake guy, had made plans to go shopping for new clothes. Dylan had relatives in the city and was going to visit them. Lily Lou was also in the city, busy helping her family with a partnership deal with Nexus that was now in the implementation phase. As for Yvonne and Isabella, it went without saying. The latter was making the former work overtime to meet her deadlines. The spirit of the hustle was burning bright. So bright, in fact, they were about to burn out completely. Wyatt Way and Anna were also engrossed in their work. For some reason, the D.C. Aaron Annie Cakes had become workaholics lately. They no longer complained about their superiors or subordinates. Whenever asked, they gave the same determined reply. It's work. You have to be professional. It's purely out of professionalism. Nothing else. Leo and Claire were baffled. Something was definitely off with those two, but they didn't press the issue. After accounting for everyone, it seemed only Quinn and Marco were free that weekend. On Sunday evening, Leo and Claire thought about inviting them over for a small dinner, but they too vaguely declined. "Oh, dinner? Let's do it next time. I'm busy this weekend." "Busy with what?" "Oh, just busy." They were being very mysterious. Leo and Claire didn't push, and though they were curious, they accepted the excuse. That left just the two of them in the single slaughterhouse. Neither felt like cooking. After a brief discussion, they decided to find a small diner near the East Gate. They hopped on Amy, the pink electric scooter, and drove out of the yard under the pathetic, longing gaze of May the Maybach. A short ride later, they arrived at the East Gate. They were about to cruise down the commercial street and pick a restaurant when something caught Claire's eye from the back seat. "HM?" she murmured, then tapped her boyfriend's shoulder. "Look." Leo followed her gaze and saw a surprising sight. Up ahead on the street, a man and a woman were walking side by side, apparently also looking for a place to eat. Their silhouettes were incredibly familiar. Leo squinted, his eyes widening in surprise. "Hey, isn't that Marco and Quinn?" As always, asking for boosts and gifts. Just that afternoon, they had both claimed to be busy and turned down dinner at the LNS house. Yet here they were, unexpectedly together on the commercial street by the East Gate. It was impossible not to be suspicious. Weren't they both busy? Leo stared at Quinn and Marco up ahead, completely puzzled. When I asked them, they were so vague about it. How'd they end up together? Are they busy with the same thing? From her seat behind him, Claire leaned her head on his shoulder to get a better look. She narrowed her eyes. They don't look busy. They look like they're just out for dinner. Leo was even more confused. Then why couldn't they eat at our place? I was cooking, not you. I mean, if you were cooking, they'd be fighting to get a seat, right? He corrected himself just in time. A boyfriend's survival instincts remained sharp. Luckily, Claire wasn't paying attention to his words. She watched Quinn and Marco, a thoughtful expression on her face. "Maybe," she mused. "There's something they don't want us to know." Leo nodded in agreement. People have their secrets. Even the closest of friends don't share everything. He tilted his head back to confer with his girlfriend. "So, is it wrong for us to be following them like this?" Claire thought for a moment, then nodded. "It is." 30 seconds later, they had nimbly parked the pink scooter under a tree, locked it up, and were stealthily tailing their two friends on foot. Following them was wrong. Times. Following them on an electric scooter was wrong. Square root. The scooter was too loud and made it hard to hide. They could easily be spotted. The legendary trouble magnet couple. Their stealth and counter-surveillance skill trees were maxed out. They wouldn't make such a rookie mistake. Up ahead, Quinn and Marco continued down the street. Behind them, Leo and Claire followed, observing their every move. Soon, Leo noticed something was off. Hey, why are they walking so far apart? Normally, when their whole group of 7 or 8 went out, they were a chaotic, laughing mess, bumping and shoving each other playfully. They would cram themselves into a single elevator, squealing and refusing to wait for the next one. Not like this. Right now, it was just Quinn and Marco, yet they weren't walking side by side. They were separated by at least 3 feet of empty space, one on the left, one on the right. They were trying to look natural, but it came off as forced, as if they were deliberately hiding something. Claire, however, had already pieced it together. A small smile played on her lips. Interesting. Her curiosity piqued. She grabbed her boyfriend's hand and pulled him along, continuing their surveillance. They followed their targets until the pair stopped in front of a restaurant, seemingly discussing whether to go in. Quinn naturally turned to Marco, as if asking for his opinion. That single turn nearly exposed the 2 spies hiding behind them. Claire's reaction was instantaneous. The moment Quinn turned, she yanked Leo under the cover of a nearby tree. Using the foliage as a shield, she grabbed his sleeve, rose on her toes, and pressed her lips against his, cupping his cheek with her other hand to block their faces. Fortunately, Quinn didn't seem to notice anything behind them. After a brief exchange with Marco, the 2 of them walked into the restaurant. Under the tree, the couple finally broke their kiss. Leo was still dizzy. What was that for? Claire raised an eyebrow. Camouflage. They would have seen us otherwise. Leo glanced at the thick canopy of leaves above them. These branches are pretty dense. I don't think it would have made a difference whether we were kissing or not. Claire looked up and realized he was right. She immediately switched to a more defiant tone. The spies in movies always do it. I just wanted to see what it was like. Besides, she added, giving him a challenging look, what's wrong with me kissing you? You got a problem with that? Because if you do, I'll kiss you again. A statement that would have broken the hearts of her countless admirers. Their targets were inside. The couple didn't waste any more time and quickly followed. The hostess at the front desk saw them enter, and her eyes lit up. Wow, what a gorgeous couple. She was about to greet them enthusiastically. Welcome. But before she could finish, Leo and Claire simultaneously put a finger to their lips. Shh, quiet. The poor hostess swallowed her words. The couple didn't bother explaining, quickly moving past the front desk and into the main dining area. Not far away, Quinn and Marco had chosen a window seat and were already looking at the menu. Leo and Claire picked a table diagonally across from them, conveniently hidden by a decorative screen. For better surveillance, they sat down side by side on the same bench. The waiter came over with menus. Seeing the couple sitting together with the opposite side of the table empty, he paused, then asked tentatively, "Are you waiting for more people?" Leo waved him off. Nope, just the 2 of us." As he spoke, he craned his neck, trying to peek at Quinn and Marco's table. Claire tapped him on the head. "Be careful. Don't get caught." She took a menu from the waiter and held it up to shield their faces, her eyes peering over the top, fixed intently on the window table. The waiter, intrigued, followed their gaze. He saw Marco and Quinn and became even more confused. "Are you 2? Leo quickly shushed him again. "Keep your voice down." After a moment's thought, he offered a reasonable explanation. "I'm catching my cheating partner." The waiter was stunned. He leaned in and whispered, his voice full of disbelief. "You're catching a cheater?" His eyes darted to Claire, who was sitting right next to Leo. She nodded with a perfectly straight face. "Me too." "Waiter." A giant question mark materialized above his head. He looked from this couple to the couple at the window table. His brain short-circuited. He didn't understand what was happening, but he was profoundly shaken. Is this a team-up to catch their cheating partners? Why do I feel like these 2 are way more compatible with each other? They quickly ordered a few dishes, dismissing the still baffled waiter. But they kept the menu. Sitting side by side, they held it up as a screen, 2 heads peeking over the top, surreptitiously watching the table by the window. The reasonable couple observes in secret. JPG. At their table, Quinn and Marco seemed to have relaxed a bit after sitting down. Their conversation flowed more naturally. The restaurant wasn't busy, and the atmosphere was quiet. Leo and Claire strained their ears, catching snippets of dialogue through the semi-hollow screen. It didn't seem like they were discussing anything special, just catching up on classes and life, and talking about some popular topics online. Leo was perplexed. There's nothing here they couldn't let us hear. Not a single inside joke. Why go through all this trouble to sneak out? Beside him, Claire looked at her boyfriend like he was an idiot. You still don't get it? They're on a date. Leo froze. Then his eyes widened in shock. A date? Marco? With Quinn? It was an answer the dense, straight-laced man had never even considered. His first reaction was denial. No way. Seriously. Leo's brain was having trouble processing this. They had all known each other for over a year, spending nearly every day together. They were too familiar. They always called each other Quinn and Marco, teasing each other like bickering siblings. And now, suddenly, they were a romantic couple. The sheer improbability of it was. It was like Anna and Wyatt Way getting together. It was impossible. While her boyfriend was muttering to himself in a state of utter shock, Claire continued to carefully observe the pair at the window table, a thoughtful look on her face. "I'm not so sure," she mused. "Maybe. They're not officially a couple yet." A short while later, their food arrived. As the waiter set down the plates, he couldn't help but steal a few more glances at Leo and Claire. He'd been a waiter for years and had never seen anything so bizarre. Catching cheaters. Together? And they were both ridiculously good-looking. He was tempted to tell them to just forget about their cheating partners and get together themselves. They were obviously a much better match. Leo and Claire paid the waiter no mind. They ate while continuing their enthusiastic surveillance. At the window table, Quinn and Marco had also started eating. Claire noticed a detail and nudged her boyfriend. "Look." Leo followed her gaze. He saw that Marco and Quinn were eating skewers. Realization dawned on him. "Oh, this place is skewers? We should order some." A sharp elbow jabbed him in the ribs. "I'm not telling you to look at the food. Look closer." When Leo looked again, he saw that the two had been eating their own food, but then Quinn, who was eating a beef skewer, suddenly grimaced and let out a small gasp. She quickly took a sip of her drink, fanning her mouth and panting dramatically. Marco immediately asked if she was okay. They could faintly hear their conversation. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" "I'm fine. This skewer is a little spicy." "Spicy? It tastes fine to me. Try it if you don't believe me." Without missing a beat, Quinn nonchalantly handed her half-eaten skewer to Marco. He hesitated for a second, glancing at her perfectly composed face, then seemed to make up his mind. He took it, had a bite, and looked surprised. "It's fine. Not spicy at all." Quinn continued to sip her drink, looking down. "Really? Then you should have some more." Leo still didn't see what was so special about it. "What's the big deal? You did the same thing to me back in high school at Pop's Fry Shack. It's pretty normal." Claire, exasperated, shoved a chicken leg into his mouth. "You clueless idiot, just eat your food." She turned back to watch Quinn, a look of pure admiration on her face. The indirect kiss. A classic, taught by none other than Bertha Sue herself, as expected of my roommate of 1 year. She has real talent. After dinner, Quinn and Marco paid their bill and left the restaurant. Leo and Claire quickly settled up and followed. They trailed the pair back onto campus. By now, night had fallen. The streetlights on the tree-lined path hadn't turned on yet, making it difficult to see. Quinn glanced at Marco, who was still walking 3 feet away from her. She bit her lip, then spoke as casually as she could. "Hey, can you hold my hand?" The question caught Marco completely off guard. "Hold your hand." Quinn's expression was calm. "Yeah, it's too dark on this path, and I've been a little scared of the dark lately." She looked up at him. "You're a gentleman. Protecting a lady isn't too much to ask, right?" She confidently held out her hand. Marco, as if waking from a dream, nodded vigorously. "Not at all, not at all." He took a deep breath, stepped forward, and gently took her hand. The moment their hands touched, a slight tremor ran through both of them. They quickly composed themselves and continued walking, now side by side. Watching from behind, Leo suddenly had a moment of clarity. "Hey, didn't you use that same excuse on me back in high school? You were scared of the dark then, too. How come you're not scared anymore?" Claire replied without missing a beat. "People grow." She saw the couple getting further away and urged him on. "Come on, we're going to lose them." Without another word, she hurried after them. "Scared of the dark? Please. It was just a little trick to get a boyfriend." The dark was more scared of her than she was of it. They spied and observed for the entire evening. Unfortunately, the grand finale was just Marco properly escorting Quinn back to the entrance of her dorm. He watched her go upstairs, and that was it. No other explosive developments. But for the lethal and savage couple, it was still a deeply satisfying experience. Back at the LNS house that night, Claire was still buzzing with excitement. "That was fun," she said to Leo. "Let's do it again sometime." Watching other people navigate the ambiguous phase was a unique pleasure. No wonder so many people loved shipping couples. She felt like she'd gotten a good dose of it tonight. But it wasn't enough. Quinn had learned a few tricks, but she was still an amateur. Bertha Sue decided on the spot. She was going to teach her a few more moves. Seeing his girlfriend's determination to mentor her roommate, Leo felt he couldn't just stand by. He had to help his own roommate out. After a moment's thought, he made a decision. "In that case, I'll teach Marco a few tricks too." Before he could finish, Claire shot him down without hesitation. "No, if you get involved, their chances are dead in the water." As always, asking for boosts and gifts. Hearing Claire's assessment, Leo was initially indignant. He rolled up his sleeves, ready to argue his case. Bertha Sue, don't be so dramatic. When it comes to dating and chasing girls, I know a thing or two, okay? Before the words were even out of his mouth, Claire shot him a sidelong glance and delivered a casual, devastating blow. A thing or two? Like what? Buying snacks for Sarah Lynn at the school store in high school. A critical hit, straight to the face. His embarrassing past, thrown right back at him. Leo choked, coughing awkwardly. Hey, that was so long ago. What's Sarah Lynn? To hell with Sarah Lynn. Let's not talk about that. One of his two things was instantly nullified. He still had one left. Leo rallied. Well, my confession to you was pretty romantic, wasn't it? On the top of Serenity Peak, with the chapel bells as our witness, the Bodhisattva as our guide, I got down on one knee. Ugh, no, not the one knee part. He'd been so nervous, he'd almost turned the confession into a proposal. That was another embarrassing memory. Skip. But the line, if I ask my heart and find it wanting, delivered against the backdrop of the ancient chapel and falling snow. That was pure gold. Claire actually nodded slightly at that. It was okay, I guess. Then she delivered her summary, her tone light and airy. So a certain romance expert spent the second half of senior year as my desk mate, holding my hand to and from school, studying together, eating together, riding his bike to take me home, kissing me at the karaoke bar, hugging me on top of Mount Jade, receiving flowers from me at the freshman gala, and celebrating the Star Festival with me. And it only took him half a year, plus nearly dying, to cleverly figure out that he liked me too. And then he confessed, and it was a piece of cake. She listed it all out as Leo stared dumbfounded. Finally, she looked up at her boyfriend with a sweet smile. That's about right, isn't it? She gave him a thumbs up. A true romance expert. Amazing. Leo. In the span of 30 seconds, he'd been utterly decimated. Leo the Hammer could only surrender. Okay, fine. I won't give Marco any advice. After hearing his girlfriend's summary, he had to admit, if he tried to coach his roommate, Marco and Quinn's relationship probably wouldn't get off the ground until their next lifetime. Although they had decided to help, a moment's reflection made them reconsider. Quinn and Marco were clearly in the delicate, early stages of testing the waters, and judging by their secretive behavior, they want to keep it under wraps for now. So Leo and Claire decided to hold off. They would watch and wait. Oh wait, watch and wait times. Secretly enjoy the show. Square root. As the new week began, everything seemed normal. But now that they were paying attention, Leo and Claire easily noticed the little schemes and subtle moves their respective roommates were pulling. For instance, in room 520, after their Tuesday morning class, the four of them would usually head to the dining hall for lunch. But the moment class ended, Marco shot up from his seat. Hey guys, something came up. You three go ahead. Cheryl Chun from the arts department needs me for something. Before anyone could react, he was gone. Meanwhile, over in room 205, they had class at the new campus that morning. Normally, the girls would hang out in the city afterward, taking photos or browsing the little boutiques before catching the shuttle back to the old campus in the afternoon. Not today. The second the bell rang, as the other girls were discussing which new clothing store to check out, Quinn was already packed up and on her feet. You guys go on without me. I'm going to go catch the shuttle. I have something to do back at the old campus. I'm having some trouble with my world economics homework, so I made an appointment with my professor to get some help. By the time she finished speaking, she was already sprinting towards the shuttle stop. The remaining members of both dorms were left bewildered. Does the arts department have a project going on right now? Since when did Quinn become such a dedicated student? And it didn't stop there. Whenever the two dorms had a group dinner and someone suggested going for karaoke afterward, Marco and Quinn would invariably stand up. You guys go ahead. I'm not feeling well. I'm heading back to the dorm. Ugh, now that you mention it, Quinn, my stomach kind of hurts too. I need to head back as well. Are you okay? I can walk you back. Sure, thanks, Quinn. Of course, that's what friends are for. Let's go. The two of them, in perfect sync, would make their exit under the confused gazes of their friends, leaving everyone else staring at each other, baffled. What's with those two? Why do they keep skipping out on group activities lately? They're being so antisocial. Only Leo and Claire would exchange a knowing smile, their eyes twinkling with the pure joy of professional trolls. Everyone else was in the dark, but they knew exactly what was going on. They didn't expose them, but a little creative thinking gave them the perfect way to have some fun with their secretive, love-struck roommates. For example, when Marco made an excuse about running to the campus store at night, when he was actually sneaking out to meet Quinn for a walk, Leo would casually ask him to grab some snacks. This would prompt Leon and Dylan to chime in with their own long lists of requests. The great Marco couldn't refuse, and ended up spending a significant portion of his allowance on provisions for the dorm. And when Quinn used the visiting a professor excuse to meet up with him, Claire would innocently ask her to take her homework along for the professor to look at, which would prompt Molly and Jade to do the same. Quinn would have to agree through a forced smile, her face a picture of misery as she left with a stack of her roommate's assignments. For several nights in a row, the two poor souls in their ambiguous phase couldn't even have a proper date. One saw his funds depleted, suffering heavy financial losses. The other was forced to spend her evenings grading her roommate's homework until she questioned her own existence. It was a whole new kind of dating experience. There was no time for blushing, heart-pounding romance. The suffering index, however, was maxed out. The suffering couple. A suffering couple. Before they could taste the sweetness of their budding romance, they first had to endure the bitterness of a secret relationship. All thanks to a certain troublemaking couple. As expected of the master and mistress of the singles slaughterhouse, even their method of shipping was unique. Most people get their fill from watching cute moments, smiling contentedly from the sidelines. These two got their fill by actively taking advantage of their targets, and they loved every second of it. Of course, they didn't take it too far. If they broke their test subjects and ruined their chances at romance, there would be nothing left to watch. The lethal and savage couple's shipping philosophy was simple, sustainable exploitation. Besides having fun with their roommates, Leo and Claire were both busy with their own work. The rating system Leo had proposed for Happy Nest, the combination of Yelp, Instagram, and ESPN forums, had completed its internal testing. This week, the R&D department was working overtime to finalize the details, preparing to officially launch the new feature. As the company CISO, Leo had to be there to personally oversee the process. Meanwhile, Claire's work at Sterling Holdings had picked up again. The company's third-quarter projects were officially underway, and the monthly department summary meetings had begun. As the next in line to take over, she had to attend frequently to stay informed. Leo was a little curious. Didn't you already sit in on all the department meetings? You still haven't decided which area you want to take over. Claire had mentioned this to him before. Her plan was to first take charge of a single department to begin her transition into running the company. Several months had passed, but it seemed she still hadn't made her choice. She nodded in response to his question. Yeah, I haven't decided yet. I want to look around a bit more. With Charles Sterling still at the helm, Sterling Holdings was stable and prosperous. There were no fires to put out. And with her 10 years of experience as CEO in her past life, Claire could handle any department with ease. Having too many options was, ironically, making it harder to choose. Within the company, however, every department head and employee was eagerly awaiting her decision. They all hoped she would choose their department, which would make them the future CEO's first trusted team. Their status within the company would skyrocket. As a result, during every meeting, they all tried their best to impress her, preening like peacocks. The executives from the Southwest branch were especially eager. During the earthquake disaster, Claire had personally taken command, even flying down to the branch headquarters to restore order. Her decisive leadership and powerful presence had completely won them over. At recent company-wide meetings, they were the most aggressive in their flattery, even publicly requesting that Charles Sterling allow his daughter to return to the Southwest to continue leading their operations. Unfortunately, their flattery backfired spectacularly. The moment she heard their proposal, Claire's brow furrowed. Go to the Southwest. Then my boyfriend and I would be in a long-distance relationship. Someone is trying to separate us by thousands of miles when things are going so well. The Southwest branch. Their intentions are treasonous. Snapping back to the present, she gave her boyfriend a different explanation. There's no rush. Once I officially take over a department, things will get really busy. I'll just wait and see for now. While Claire wasn't in a hurry, Happy Nest was. The new rating system feature was officially launched with great fanfare. On the first day, an official announcement appeared on the website's homepage, complete with a pop-up tutorial. Countless users, logging on to check their friends' feeds, were greeted by the eye-catching new feature in the sidebar. A rating system? What was that? Curious, they clicked on it to see what it was all about. The explanation was simple and easy to understand. At first, most users didn't pay it much mind. It was just another widget, probably not as exciting as the Campus All-Stars contest. What was so fun about rating things? They browsed a bit. Oh, you could rate NBA games, soccer players, public figures, and celebrities. They casually gave an actor 3 stars. The rating went through, and the system displayed the actor's current average score. Suddenly, users felt a spark of interest. This is kind of fun. They tried again and again. Soon, they were hooked. Then they discovered they could create their own entries. The old Campus All-Stars contest required contestants to sign up themselves. Now, Users could create entries for anyone and invite others to rate them. The enthusiasm of college students across the country was instantly ignited. They scrambled to edit and upload entries, putting themselves and all their friends on the platform, giving each other 5-star reviews, and temporarily shooting to the top of the rankings. They would then immediately send the link to others to show off. Look, I'm a certified 5-star hottie on Happy Nest. Their friend would look confused. It says 2.5 stars. The show-off would freeze, then check again, horrified. Who the hell was so cruel as to give me a bunch of 1-star ratings already? They would then frantically message all their friends to help them boost their score back up. When you mobilize the passion of broke, bored, and brilliant college students, you get a free army of promoters. On the first day of its launch, the rating system went viral across universities nationwide. The number of daily users surpassed 12 million. The average user rated more than five items. The sudden surge in traffic nearly crashed Happy Nest servers. The entire domestic internet was once again buzzing. What the hell has Happy Nest cooked up this time? As the rating system took the internet by storm, the renovation of the Blockhead workshop on the commercial street was also nearing completion. Uncle 16 proudly informed the lethal and savage couple that would be finished in another 3 or 4 days. With the grand opening imminent, they needed to stock up on blank figurines and paints. The supplies were supposed to be shipped directly from Robert Wallace's factory in Northwood. At the last minute, however, his father changed his mind and called Leo to say he was personally delivering the first shipment. For one, he wanted to see for himself if this figurine business was legitimate. And two, it was a good excuse for him and Susan to visit their son and future daughter-in-law. Leo was a bit surprised by the call. "You're both coming to the city?" His mother, Susan Wallace, snatched the phone. "That's right," she boomed. "Your mother is coming to see her daughter-in-law. You got a problem with that, kid?" When Susan Wallace was on the warpath, no one was safe. Leo quickly swore his enthusiastic welcome, which seemed to satisfy her. Then she added, "We're also coming for business. I'm bringing a few of the core bakery staff to do some market research. I want to get a sweet return franchise open in the city as soon as possible." Leo understood. As expected of his mother, her ambition was boundless. He immediately laid on another thick layer of praise. His mother nodded in satisfaction, then remembered something and started complaining about her husband. "Not like your father. He's supposed to be coming here for work, but when he was packing, he insisted on bringing that stupid fishing rod of his. Said he has a little old buddy in the city he hasn't seen in a while and wants to go fishing with him. As always, asking for boosts and gifts. His parents were set to arrive in 2 days, and Leo wasn't too concerned. Let them come. In his past life, though he had worked and settled in the city, he was always too busy, especially after starting his own business. His parents, worried about being a burden, had never had the chance to visit. Well, that wasn't entirely true. The only time they had come to the city was likely after he had died, saving his high school deskmate, to collect his body and arrange his funeral. Damn, what a dark thought. He couldn't help but wonder what the funeral was like, how much his parents had grieved. A wave of guilt washed over him. He also wondered if Claire, the CEO of Sterling Holdings, had met his parents then. His thoughts drifted for a moment, tinged with a strange melancholy. Shaking it off, he made a decision. Since his parents were coming, he would take the opportunity to show them around the city, give them a proper vacation. It was a way to make up for the regrets of his past life. While Leo was feeling relaxed and philosophical, Claire, upon hearing the news, went into overdrive. If Leo hadn't stopped her, she would have stormed out of her meeting at Sterling Holdings headquarters and rushed back to personally deep clean the entire L&S house. Her future in-laws were coming. The house had to be spotless, perfect. She had to uphold her reputation as a capable and virtuous daughter-in-law. A meeting? What was a meeting compared to hosting her in-laws? It took a great deal of convincing from Leo over the phone to calm her down. "Just stay in your meeting, please. Mom and Dad won't be here for another 2 days. And you don't have to worry about cleaning. I only have 1 gym class this afternoon. I'll go home and take care of it." Only then did Claire reluctantly agree. But before hanging up, she gave him a long list of instructions. "Make sure you clean thoroughly. The bedroom and bathroom too. No dust. Dad likes tea, so take out that tea set from the storage room and wash it." She paused mid-sentence, as if changing her mind. "Oh, never mind. Don't use that one. I'll bring a set back with me." Without explaining further to her confused boyfriend, she hung up the phone. On the 37th floor of the Sterling Holdings headquarters, inside the chairman's office, Claire put her phone away. She turned to the group of VPs and senior executives seated on the sofa and gave them a nonchalant nod. "You all carry on. I'm heading down to my department meeting." As she left, under the stunned gazes of the company's top brass, she casually picked up a priceless tea set from her father's personal tea table and walked out. A few moments later, Charles Sterling entered in high spirits. He was already planning where he and his old friend from Northwood would go fishing in a couple of days. As he entered the office, his demeanor instantly shifted back to that of the formidable chairman. He nodded at his subordinates, who had all risen to their feet, and said, "Let's begin the reports." As he spoke, he moved towards the tea table, intending to brew a pot of tea, as was his habit. He sat down. He reached for the teapot. Charles Sterling froze. Question mark. Where was his teapot? Where was his entire, very expensive tea set? It was Wednesday. After his afternoon gym class, Leo remembered his girlfriend's instructions and headed back to the LNS house to clean. He rode his pink scooter down from the dorms, enjoying the breeze, and arrived home a short while later. He parked Amy next to May in the yard, ignoring the Maybach's pathetic, neglected expression, and went inside. Standing in the living room, he looked around. The house had never seemed this big before. The thought of cleaning it all by himself was daunting. It was a huge job for one person. An idea struck him. He pulled out his phone, logged into AAM, and sent a message to a recently created group chat. 20 minutes later, 6 guys and 4 girls, 10 bright-eyed, energetic freshmen from Northwood High, were standing at attention in his living room. Leo, his adorably naive underclassmen. They had no particular skills, but they had boundless energy and strength. He had recruited them to work at the Blockhead workshop, and they had been counting down the days until they could start. They were all free this afternoon, and the moment they got his message, they had rushed over. Now, the 10 of them were looking at him with eager, hopeful eyes. "Do you have a job for us today, Leo? Is the workshop renovation finished? Can we start working?" "Such good." Employees. Leo felt a surge of gratification. He cleared his throat and began his speech with a perfectly straight face. "The workshop renovation is almost done, but not quite. When it opens, we'll be dealing with a lot of paints and DIY materials, so cleanliness will be a top priority. That's why I've called you all here today, for a round of practical training. You'll be using this house as your practice ground to test your operational skills." He was about to add that he would, of course, pay them for their time. But before he could, the freshmen were already fired up. "Don't worry, Leo. We'll get the job done. We promise we won't let you or Claire down." Before Leo could even react, they had scattered, grabbing brooms, buckets, and trash cans, and swarming the house with a flurry of activity. Not a word wasted. All they saw was work to be done. While the freshmen were busy downstairs, Leo went up to tidy up the master bedroom. After all, the friendship vibrating bed was not something suitable for younger audiences. After a quick cleanup upstairs, he went down to the kitchen, washed some fruit, and checked the fridge for snacks. A pile of Claire's homemade cookies. He skipped those. He grabbed some juice and brought everything out to the dining room, calling the freshmen over for a break. They obediently filed over and sat down neatly at the table. As they ate fruit and drank juice, they started chatting excitedly. The topic immediately turned to Happy Nest's new rating feature. Though it had only been live for a couple of days, it was already the talk of every university campus. The platform had even launched some official categories, like a university ranking list, inviting students and alumni to rate their schools. Harvard and Yale were, of course, at the top. Berkeley was right behind them, currently in 3rd place. The freshmen, despite having only been at Berkeley for a short time, already felt a strong sense of school pride and had all given it a 5-star rating to boost its score. Suddenly, Alex Zhang noticed something. "Hey," he exclaimed. "They've opened up a high school ranking list too." This got everyone excited. They eagerly opened the app to search for their alma mater. "Quick, let's see how Northwood High is doing. Let's boost its score while it's still new. Maybe we can get it to number 1. And then, they found it, and stared at their phones, completely stunned. Leo leaned over, curious. "What's wrong? What's the score?" One of the freshmen awkwardly handed him his phone. "Well, it's getting a lot of traffic." Leo looked. The traffic was indeed high. Compared to other high schools that had just been added and only had a handful of ratings, the entry for Northwood High already had over 200. A landslide lead. Northwood High 4-1. Featured comment. "Screw Northwood High." This was a bit awkward. A group of Northwood High graduates sat around the dining table at the LNS house, staring blankly at their alma mater's 4-1-star rating. Leo coughed. "Looks like our school has made a lot of enemies." He adopted a commanding tone. "Hey, what are you all staring at? Hurry up and get it some 5-star reviews to pull the score up." As the freshmen scrambled to boost the rating on their phones, Leo pulled out his own, preparing to rally the troops. "I'll get some people on it too. When our alma mater is in trouble, how can we, as its honored alumni, just stand by and watch?" He delivered the line with righteous indignation and a perfectly straight face, earning him some suspicious side glances from the freshmen. If they hadn't already spent a couple of months at Berkeley, they might have actually believed him. It sounded like he was rushing to save his beloved school from crisis. But he conveniently left out the part about who caused the crisis in the first place. After a flurry of activity, they managed to raise Northwood High's score by 1/10 of a point or two. Better than nothing. Changing the subject, Leo casually asked for their opinions on Happy Nest's new rating feature. The feedback was unanimously positive. The guys who were into basketball and soccer, who used to be confined to sports forums, now had a more convenient and direct way to discuss games and players with fellow fans. One of them even praised, Happy Nest did such a great job with this feature. I used to hang out on the ESPN forums all the time. Those useless forums. Why couldn't they have come up with something like this? The irony was thick. The girls, meanwhile, were addicted to the restaurant recommendations and the makeup and fashion-sharing functions. They chattered excitedly about how much easier the feature made their lives. Before, they would only log into Happy Nest occasionally. Now, they were spending hours a day on it, completely mesmerized by the recommendations from other women. Leo listened with a faint smile. This was exactly his vision for Happy Nest. What did real-life integration mean? It meant making your product an indispensable part of your users' daily lives. After a game, the first thing they should do is go to Happy Nest to rate the players. When they need fashion advice, they should turn to Happy Nest as the most authoritative source. Even for something as simple as choosing a restaurant for the weekend, their first instinct should be to check the ratings on Happy Nest. Alex Zhang suddenly had another brainwave. Hey, this business rating feature could be useful for our workshop, too. Before we open, we can create an entry for the Blockhead Workshop and give it a bunch of 5-star reviews. That way, when we open, people will see it's a 5-star shop. It's like free online advertising. The other freshman's eyes lit up in agreement. Leo just smiled and shook his head. That won't work. For a feature like this to succeed, Happy Nest has to maintain its authority and fairness. The R&D department has built algorithms to detect things like that. Any malicious review bombing or sudden spikes in positive reviews will be flagged for manual review. He finished with a virtuous summary. So, aside from promotion, our Blockhead Workshop has to earn its reputation through genuine quality. Everything else is just a shortcut. The freshmen were deeply impressed, looking at Leo with newfound reverence. As expected of our upperclassmen. Such integrity. Leo accepted their admiring gazes without a hint of shame. Of course, in the beginning, Happy Nest had to build a reputation for fairness. But once that reputation was established, accepting some paid promotions from businesses was perfectly reasonable. And when it came to choosing businesses for a free trial promotion, well, this CSO, acting with pure objectivity, would have no problem nominating his own family's business. It was only fair. That evening, when Claire returned to the LNS house, she was amazed to find the place sparkling clean, as if a team of 10 maids had gone over it 3 times. She asked Leo what had happened. Oh, I was going to clean it myself, he said, his face a mask of innocence, but Alex and the others insisted on helping out. Claire didn't buy it for a second. She gave him a skeptical look. Insisted on helping? More like a certain Leo, the hammer went into full-blown evil capitalist mode and tricked him again. Just then, Leo noticed the bag in her hand. Hey, where'd you get that tea set? Now, it was Bertha Sue's turn to be nonchalant. It's Charles Sterling's. He said he's quitting tea and didn't want to go to waste, so he insisted I take it. Leo paused. Quitting tea. Insisted she take it. He gave his girlfriend a sidelong glance. The master and mistress of the singles slaughterhouse stared at each other. Fair enough. 2 peas in a pod. It was no wonder they had ended up together. Reasonable. On Saturday morning, Leo's parents were due to arrive in the city on the overnight sleeper train from Northwood. Leo and Claire were up early, getting ready to go pick them up. This time, the scooter wouldn't do. The long-neglected Maybach was finally being called back into service. Under the bright morning sun, May shot a smug look at the little pink scooter parked beside it. May, with a roar of its engine, it sped off, carrying the master and mistress of the singles slaughterhouse toward the city. 40 minutes later, they arrived at the train station. After a bit of waiting and a confusing phone call filled with vague directions, they finally spotted his parents coming through the gate. Leo greeted them warmly. Mom, Dad. Susan Wallace rushed forward, her face beaming. She grabbed her son's head, ruffling his hair affectionately. Good, all limbs attached. You're alive and well, she declared, satisfied. Now get out of the way, I want to see my daughter. She unceremoniously shoved him aside and rushed to greet Claire, taking her hands and chattering away. Robert Wallace, fishing rod slung over his shoulder, walked up and gave his son a stern nod. Everything okay here in the city? Everything's great, Leo replied. He looked at the fishing gear. Dad, I thought you were coming to deliver the figurines. All you brought was a fishing rod. His father waved a hand dismissively. Too much cargo. I had the factory ship it. As for this rod, he glanced over his shoulder at it, then waved his hand again with a grand gesture. This is your old man fishing for a big one for you. You wouldn't understand. As always, asking for boosts and gifts. Robert and Susan Wallace had brought 2 girls with them from Northwood. They were employees from the Sweet Return Bakery, one named Jenna and the other Laura. Both were only 23 or 4, quick, diligent, and sharp. Back in Northwood, they had become Susan's most trusted assistants. Even in terms of looks, they were standouts among the bakery's staff. At the very least, they'd be considered the prettiest girls in their class at school. On the new rating system Happiness just launched, they'd easily pull a 6. 5. The 2 pretty employees were already well acquainted with Leo from back in Northwood. Now, carrying their bags upstairs, they saw him and broke into playful, teasing greetings. Junior, haven't seen you in a few months, Junior, and you've gotten even more handsome. They barely got 2 sentences out before a cool gaze swept over them. Jenna and Laura flinched. They turned to see Claire Sterling looking at them with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. They instantly straightened up, their playful demeanor vanishing as they stood at attention and stammered a greeting. And Mrs. Boss. Over the summer, Susan had entrusted the bakery's employee training to her daughter-in-law. The future president of Sterling Holdings had stepped in, and without much effort at all, she had whipped the unruly group of female employees into shape. They were so thoroughly disciplined that none of them dared to even think of rebelling. The rumor was that when Leo and Claire returned to Berkeley at the end of the summer, the staff at the Sweet Return Bakery nearly popped champagne in celebration. The demoness was finally gone. Seeing her again now, Jenna and Laura were like mice facing a cat. Every bit of their vibrant, outgoing energy vanished, and they became as meek as school children. Susan, however, didn't seem to mind the scene. In fact, a satisfied smile spread across her face. She walked over, took her daughter-in-law's hand, and explained, Jenna and Laura came with me to do some market research. They're both sharp and efficient. If we end up opening a Sweet Return branch here in Berkeley, these 2 will be the store managers. Claire smiled. Is that so? That's wonderful. We'll have plenty of opportunities to get to know each other. Then, as she spoke, her smiling gaze fell upon the 2 bakery employees. I'll be counting on you both from now on. Though her words were delivered with a smile, Jenna and Laura nearly shivered. The smiles they forced in return were more pained than a grimace. And not at all. W will be the ones counting on you. A wave of regret washed over them. Before they came, all they could think about was exploring the big city and seeing their handsome Junior. They'd completely forgotten about his wife, the great demon Lord herself. With Robert, Susan, and the 2 bakery employees, there were 4 people in total. Add Leo and Claire, and the Maybach would be a tight squeeze. After a quick discussion, Jenna and Laura took their luggage and hailed a cab, heading toward Berkeley's old campus to find a hotel and settle in. Robert and Susan, meanwhile, were going with their son and daughter-in-law to see this so-called LNS house. Leo drove on the way back. Sitting in the back seat of the Maybach, Robert and Susan couldn't help but look around in amazement. They asked their daughter-in-law, Claire, isn't this your father's car? Did he just give it to you? Facing her in-laws, Claire just smiled serenely. Yes, my dad doesn't like to drive it. It was just sitting around, so he left it with me. Susan didn't know much about cars, but as she admired the interior, she asked curiously, this car must be pretty expensive, right? Does it cost a few $100,000? Claire nodded without batting an eye. MHM, around there. The price is what it is. It's just for getting around. If you and Dad like it, you can take it for a while. May the Maybach shocked. JPG. Robert waved his hands dismissively. No, you 2 can drive it. We're parents. We can't be taking things from our kids. He subconsciously touched the fishing gear bag by his side. Come to think of it, his little brother had given him this, too. He had only known that his brother-in-law was in business. But now, looking at this Maybach, Robert had a better sense of things than Susan. He knew a car like this had to be over $1 million, which meant his little brother's business was probably quite large. Maybe a multi-millionaire. Robert drew in a sharp breath. He suddenly felt the weight of his responsibility for his son's future grow heavier. For the sake of his son and daughter-in-law's happiness, he, Robert Wallace, had to work hard and negotiate carefully with his new brother. They had given Jenna and Laura the address to a motel near the east gate of the old campus, telling them to check in with their luggage first. Meanwhile, the Wallace family of 4 had already arrived back at the LNS house in the Maybach. As they pushed open the door, Reasonable came flapping over to greet them. King Dad, Queen Mom, King Dad, Queen Mom. Robert and Susan were too stunned by the house to pay attention to the chubby parrot. Whoa, this house. It must cost a fortune, even to rent. Then they heard their daughter-in-law casually mention that they'd already bought the place and that the two of them stayed here on weekends. Robert and Susan gasped again. A house in Berkeley. They just bought it? Susan pulled her son aside and whispered, I'll start sending you a little more for your allowance each month. You can't just live off Claire, you know. Robert, on the other hand, was now even more convinced of his brother-in-law's immense wealth. He probably wasn't just a multimillionaire. He had to be worth tens of millions, at least. The pressure mounted, but despite their shock, the older couple quickly recovered. At their son and daughter-in-law's invitation, they began exploring the singles slaughterhouse with fresh curiosity. Claire, acting the part of the perfect daughter-in-law, affectionately linked her arm with Susan's, giving her in-laws a dutiful and enthusiastic tour. This is the storage room, and next to it is the game room. The guest bedrooms and bathroom are downstairs. They've all been cleaned with fresh sheets and mattresses for you two to try tonight. Upstairs is the master bedroom and bath and a dressing room. When they reached the master bedroom, Robert and Susan looked around curiously, then exchanged a knowing glance. The young couple was getting along well. Living in separate dorms wasn't convenient. They probably came back to the house to stay quite often. As their daughter-in-law continued the tour, Robert curiously picked up an object from the bedside table. Hey, what's this remote for? There was no television in the master bedroom, so it obviously wasn't for a TV. Susan came closer, marveling. The air conditioner? The AC in the big city is different, huh? It has 7 levels. Robert's interest was piqued. Let me try it. In the next second, Leo and Claire, realizing what was about to happen, paled and lunged forward. Wait a second. At noon, the atmosphere around the dining table at the LNS house was slightly strange. The four of them sat together, the conversation appearing relaxed and harmonious on the surface. Dad, try these chicken wings. You two should eat more vegetables. Pay attention to your nutrition. Claire, don't just serve us, have some meat yourself. They serve each other food, chatting and laughing warmly. It was a picture of domestic bliss. But the moment they lowered their heads to eat, both the masters of the single slaughterhouse and their guests couldn't help but let their pupils quake. Oh my God, so awkward. Robert and Susan secretly exchanged a look, their eyes filled with a shared, silent sigh. The kids are all grown up. The furniture in the big city is really different from back home. Claire was so mortified she couldn't even look up. She glanced secretly at Leo, only to find her boyfriend still completely absorbed in his food. Annoyed, she extended her leg under the table and stomped on his foot in frustration. Hiss! Leo sucked in a sharp breath and looked up at his girlfriend, confused. Their eyes met in a silent conversation. How dare you use a question mark? This is all your fault. My fault? What did I do? Whose fault is it if not yours? I just need someone to blame. In that case, let's blame the bed. To hell with the friendship bed. After lunch, Susan pulled her daughter-in-law over to the living room sofa to chat, saying they needed to go over the market research plan for the bakery. The two men of the Wallace family, knowing their place, efficiently cleared the table and took the dishes to the kitchen. In the kitchen, they worked in practiced harmony at the sink. Robert finally asked his son about the business plan for the blockheaded figures, still a little worried. I had the factory ship 5,000 of the blank base model figures over. But what's the use of these plain white ones? You really think people will buy this stuff? Before coming, Leo had already given his father instructions. Of the first batch of 20,000 blank figures, 15,000 were to be kept at the factory, waiting for the design drafts to be finalized for a second round of detailed sculpting. Those would be sold directly as merchandise for the Battle Through the Heavens IP. The remaining 5,000 were to be shipped to Berkeley as they were. They would supply Chloe Chu's chain of maternity stores and their own blockhead workshop, following the Fluid Art Bear DIY model. Of course, the concept of Fluid Art Bears didn't exist yet. That made his Fluid Art blockheads the original. Come to think of it, Nexus, Funko, Instagram, TikTok, Reddit. It seemed a lot of present and future business titans were coincidentally and reasonably living in his shadow. Shaking off his thoughts, Leo gave his father a simple explanation. Robert listened, looking a bit lost. FL Fluid Blockheads. He didn't understand, but the name sounded strange a little. Loot. He subconsciously thought of the bed he'd seen in his son and daughter-in-law's bedroom. The old man's face hardened as he adopted a fatherly, authoritative tone. You need to conduct yourself properly in life and in business. Young people must be wary of temptation. Practice moderation. Now, words alone weren't enough. After the dishes were done, Leo and Claire took Robert and Susan to the Blockhead Workshop on the commercial street near the east gate of campus. Uncle 16's construction crew worked at lightning speed. They had perfectly executed the design plans Leo and Claire provided, bringing the store's layout and interior design to life. It would be ready to open in another 2 or 3 days. Stepping inside, the space was bright and spacious with a clear layout. Rows of display shelves lined the walls, and 2 long work islands stood in the middle of the main floor, specifically for customers to do their own DIY designs. Robert and Susan looked around, amazed. It was only then that they felt their son was taking this business seriously, and he was doing a damn good job of it. Then, Leo brought over a blank figure and some newly purchased liquid paints to demonstrate the DIY process for his parents. He selected various colors, mixing them together. Then, using a special container, he slowly poured the mixture over the head of the blank figure. The plain white blockhead was instantly covered in a magnificent, beautiful pattern of colors. As sunlight streamed through the window, the figure gleamed, suddenly possessing a new texture and beauty. Robert and Susan stared, stunned. They could hardly believe that the unremarkable blank figure from moments ago had been transformed into what looked like a high-end, premium art piece with just a bit of tinkering from their son. If the original blank figure cost less than $3 to make, then this looked like it should be worth. Hey, how much are you planning to sell one of these for? Robert suddenly remembered to ask. Leo waved his hand grandly without a second thought. Cheap, $100. The next second, his father exploded in a rage and started chasing him. You little brat. It costs less than $10, and you're selling it for $100. You have to have a conscience in business, you know. Leo quickly backtracked. No, slip of the tongue. $25 each. $100 was the price he'd set after the Fluid Art Blockhead brand was fully established. That was the brand premium. Once that happened, forget $100. He could make a limited edition and price it at $1,000 or even $10,000, and a legion of suckers would fight to buy it for their collections. Hearing his son's revised price, Robert stopped chasing him, still fuming. That's more like it. Then he did some quick math and couldn't help but get excited. 25 is not bad at all. The current cost was about $3 per unit, but with mass production, that could be reduced by another 30%. The profit margin would be over 800%. Even Susan was a little jealous. Can these little things really make that much money? One of them brings in more profit than several loaves of our bread. Jenna and Laura, who had settled in at the motel and come over to see the shop, were also staring in awe at the finished figure on the counter. Suddenly, Laura had an idea. Hey, Mrs. Boss, we could do something like this for the bakery. We don't have a mascot yet. We could design an exclusive sweet return blockhead. We could make a few different styles, and customers could get one when they spend a certain amount. It would drive sales and build our brand. At her words, Susan's eyes lit up. Oh, that's a great idea. She turned to her son for his opinion. Leo, what do you think? Leo nodded without hesitation. No problem. We can definitely do that. He glanced at Laura in surprise. The girl wasn't just pretty. She was sharp. His mother had some real talent on her team. With her son's approval, Susan made the decision on the spot. All right, let's do it. Jenna, you'll focus on managing the store. Laura, you'll be in charge of coordinating the design and production of these blockheads with my son. Laura, thrilled to be given such an important task, was about to happily agree when Claire gracefully glided over and interjected with a smile. Leo's been very busy lately. You could just coordinate with me. She then turned her smiling gaze to the stunned Laura. Give me a number later. We'll be in touch. Laura. Struck by lightning. JPG. Nearby, Jenna's mouth was stretched into a wide grin. Oh, that's wonderful. What a great opportunity, Laura. You and the boss's wife should definitely communicate closely. I'm not as smart as you, so I'll just have to stick to managing the branch. I'm so jealous. Haha. Claire turned to her, her smile unwavering. No need to be jealous. I have some thoughts on branch management, too. I can teach you step by step. Jenna. Suddenly not smiling. JPG. Daily request for boosts and gifts. After the tour of their son's workshop, Robert and Susan felt like their eyes had been opened, and they were more confident than ever in the block-headed figure business. When they left the shop, Laura and Jenna decided to head back to the motel for a bit. They needed to recover from the devastating news delivered by the boss's wife and mourn their fate. But the older couple's enthusiasm was still high. They said that since they'd made the trip all the way to Berkeley, they had to see the campus and experience the atmosphere of a top-tier university. So, Leo and Claire took them on a tour. Just inside the campus gates, the site of the classic Elegant academic buildings peeking through the lush trees in the serene environment made the two elders sigh in admiration. A university like this is really something else. You can feel the intellectual atmosphere just by walking in. They watched the Berkeley students strolling along the tree-lined paths, each one exuding the calm confidence of an elite scholar. The next second, a few students walking toward them spotted Leo and Claire. Their faces changed. Holy shit, the singles slaughterhouse couple. Run. They immediately spun around and fled as if their lives depended on it, terrified that a moment's delay would mean getting hit with a lethal dose of public affection. Robert and Susan, staring at the retreating backs of the students, the couple turned to their son and daughter-in-law, their faces a mask of confusion. What was that all about? Leo and Claire didn't miss a beat. Oh, it's nothing. The students here are just really shy. It's the campus culture. Having temporarily bamboozled his semi-convinced parents, Leo and Claire continued the tour, pointing out the various sites and buildings of Berkeley's old campus. This one is the second classroom building. Leo has most of his major classes here, and that one is the fourth classroom building for the big public lectures. Over there is the track. The school has 3 of them, and up ahead is the wisteria courtyard with the dining hall and some other restaurants. The food and prices are decent. As the perfect daughter-in-law, Claire's descriptions were meticulous. She was practically a professional Berkeley tour guide. Robert and Susan listened with great interest. As they passed a small grove of trees, Claire continued her narration out of habit. This is the school's makeout spot, the Overlook. Leo and I used to come here often. She stopped mid-sentence, realizing what she'd just said. Meeting her in-laws' questioning gazes, Claire forced herself to remain calm and finished the sentence without batting an eye. Leo and I used to come here often to study and memorize our notes. It's quieter here, very effective. Leo immediately nodded vigorously in support of his girlfriend. Right, we both love to study. Just as he finished, from behind a bush in the grove, a series of strange, redacted for decency's sake sounds drifted out. At that moment, they were distinctly out of place. Claire, Leo. They exchanged a look, their pupils quaking in unison. Emergency. If we say they're just practicing their vocabulary words back there, will my parents believe us? Luckily, just then, Quinn and Marco happened to be walking by, saving Leo and Claire from their predicament. Seeing the power couple at the Overlook, Quinn and Marco instinctively panicked, leaping several feet apart from each other and blurting out an explanation. We just ran into each other on our way from the dorms. Just a coincidence. But Leo and Claire, seeing their saviors, had no time to listen to their gibberish. They rushed forward enthusiastically. What a coincidence. Come on, let me introduce you. Mom, Dad, these are our roommates. Quinn and Marco paused, confused, only then noticing Robert and Susan standing behind Leo and Claire. A wave of understanding washed over them, followed by a sigh of relief. Then they, too, stepped forward with warm smiles. Hello, Uncle. Hello, Auntie. Oh, we've heard so much about you from Leo and Claire. It's so great to finally meet you. Hey, the others are back in the dorms, too. Leon, Dylan, Molly. Should we call them all out to meet you? The idea was immediately met with enthusiastic approval from Leo and Claire. Robert and Susan were also delighted at the thought of meeting all their son and daughter-in-law's roommates. Susan immediately made the call. Everyone was invited to the LNS house for dinner that night, and her husband and son would be in charge of cooking. Hearing that Leo's parents were in town, the rest of the gang from rooms 205 and 520 came over in high spirits. By a little after 5, everyone had arrived at the LNS house. They all greeted Robert and Susan warmly, complimenting Robert on his good looks and Susan on her youthfulness until the older couple was beaming. The atmosphere was lively. Jenna and Laura, who had been resting at the motel, were also invited over. When the roommates saw the 2 pretty employees from the bakery, they were all amazed. They had known Leo's family owned a bakery, but they never imagined the staff was this beautiful. And to hear there were even more girls just as striking. They were floored. Is this a bakery or a maid cafe? The arrival of 2 new beauties made Dylan's eyes go wide. He excitedly grabbed Marco's arm. One for you, one for me. Let's go get their numbers. Marco had also been momentarily stunned when Jenna and Laura walked in. But now, hearing Dylan's words, he hesitated and shook his head. I think I'll pass. Dylan was incredulous. Pass? What's gotten into you lately, Marco? These are gorgeous women. Where was the Marco who would eagerly hit on any girl, let alone a beautiful one? Marco just waved his hand again. You go ahead, I'm good. Dylan was starting to think his best friend had lost his mind. What's your deal? You don't have a girlfriend. What's wrong with talking to a pretty girl? Just then, Quinn, who was walking by, overheard their conversation and casually tossed a comment over her shoulder. Yeah, it's not like you have a girlfriend. Go talk to them. Though she looked nonchalant and had a smile on her face, her words carried a strange, dangerous edge. Marco flinched. His voice suddenly became firm and resolute. I'm still not going. I'm practicing celibacy these days. Dylan, you're on your own. Don't drag me down with you. He then squared his shoulders and walked away. Quinn watched him go, the corners of her mouth lifting in a satisfied smirk, before she, too, walked away, leaving Dylan, who had been frozen in silence for a good 3 seconds, staring blankly after them. What was going on? Marco was celibate. And what was up with Quinn? Something about the way she spoke just now felt weird. A sense of crisis washed over Dylan. I don't know what's happening, but it feels like Gotham City is about to be down to just one hero. That night, the LNS house was once again a scene of lively chaos. In the living room, the girls gathered around Susan, chattering endlessly. When they heard she was in town to scout locations for a new bakery branch, they were even more impressed. The boys were equally impressed, because they'd heard that the Sweet Return Bakery was staffed entirely by women. Even better, they had a uniform, a pink top and short skirt, paired with stockings and dark heels. The news sent a jolt of electricity through them. They were ready to bow down to Susan. You've got this, Auntie. Please open a branch in Berkeley soon, preferably right next to campus. We promise we'll be your most loyal customers. Marco, however, sat unusually straight-laced, his eyes fixed forward. This approach certainly has marketing appeal. Auntie, your business strategy is brilliant. We advertising students should really take notes. He was so serious, it was unsettling. His friends glanced at each other, baffled. What's up with Marco? This is so weird. I'm not used to it. Whatever has possessed our friend, please leave his body. Quinn, sitting nearby, feigned nonchalance. But when her gaze drifted over to Marco, her lips curled into a subtle, satisfied smile. In a corner, Dylan, having lost his Gotham brother, finally worked up the courage to try and talk to Jenna and Laura. As he approached, the two pretty employees noticed him and turned. Hey, little brother, can we help you? Oh, you're one of our junior's roommates, right? Then you must know the boss's wife really well. Their spirits lifted. They immediately surrounded Dylan. Come on, little brother, tell us. What's the secret to getting along with the boss's wife as a classmate? How did you survive a whole year with her and make it out in one piece? The two pretty older sisters were overwhelmingly forward and enthusiastic. Their perfume wafted over him as they peppered him with questions, nearly making him dizzy. He saw their beautiful faces just inches from his own, their eyes wide with expectation. Poor Dylan's face turned bright red. He opened his mouth, but not a single word came out. Jenna and Laura looked at him with concern. Little brother, are you okay? Why aren't you saying anything? Jade, passing by with a fruit platter, pushed up her glasses and offered a helpful explanation. He has some social anxiety issues. He's like this with other girls, too. One simple explanation, but it led to a grave misunderstanding. The two-star employees from Sweet Return exchanged a look of horror. A year of being classmates with the boss's wife. And he developed psychological problems. The boss's wife is that terrifying? Later that evening, after everyone had said their goodbyes, it was just the power couple and Leo's parents left at the LNS house. The older couple was staying in the guest room. After washing up, they bid their son and daughter-in-law goodnight. We're gonna head to bed. We're getting old. Go to bed early, huh? Don't mind us. You two go on and do your thing. It was a very considerate thing to say, but it almost made the young couple blush crimson. Leo, with his thick skin, handled it a bit better. Claire, on the other hand, was so embarrassed her face turned red all the way to her ears, and she couldn't even lift her head. Once his parents were settled in their room, the couple went upstairs to the master bedroom. The moment the door closed, a certain handsome young man made a move toward his girlfriend's soft, fragrant body. So, shall we get busy with our thing? The next second, the infuriated Bertha, Sue kicked him right off the bed. Busy with your head. Go to sleep. The next day, Sunday morning, the four of them had breakfast at the LNS house. Robert and Susan were now curious about their son's company, Mako Entertainment, so Leo and Claire took them downtown to have a look. They arrived at the company headquarters on Kongping Road. Even on a weekend, there were still diligent employees working overtime. When they saw the boss and the boss's wife arrive for an inspection, they all stood up to greet them warmly. Isabella Zhao, the head of the art department, was naturally there. She immediately came bouncing over. Boss's wife. Oh, and who are these two? When Leo introduced his parents, Isabella's eyes lit up like light bulbs. The Emperor Boss and Empress Boss. She had clearly been reading too many Battle Through the Heavens novels. She immediately showered them with 12,000% enthusiasm, serving tea, pouring water, and fussing over them. She also took on the role of tour guide, showing the older couple around the office. Finally, she brought out the Battle Through the Heavens design drafts for the blockheaded figures for Robert to critique. When he praised them, she beamed with joy, but as she was smiling, she secretly pulled Leo into a corner. Boss, why do the Emperor Boss and Empress Boss call you Leo too? Hearing them use that name had nearly given her a heart attack. For a moment, she thought the secret of her boss's real name, which she believed only she knew, was so well kept that even his own parents had been fooled. Leo explained without batting an eye. Oh, they're helping me with the cover story too. The three of you are the only ones in the world who know the secret. Isabella's eyes widened in understanding. I see. Reasonable. Perfectly reasonable. After touring their son's company, it was nearing lunchtime. As they were looking for a place to eat downtown, Robert and Susan remembered their goddaughter. By the way, where's Annie Cakes? She's interning downtown, right? Ask her if she's free to join us for lunch. Leo immediately nodded and called Anna. Nearby, Claire raised an eyebrow as if she'd just had an idea. Perfect. I'll ask Punching Bag if he's free to. Half an hour later, in a private room at a small downtown diner, Leo, Claire, and his parents had just sat down when Anna burst in. Goddad, Godmom, she cried, joyfully throwing herself into their arms for a hug. About 5 minutes later, a certain heir to the Wei family, who had actually arrived at the same time but waited outside for 5 minutes to maintain appearances, walked in with a radiant smile. So sorry I'm late. Oh, Goddad, Godmom, hello. My name is Wyatt Wei, but you could just call me Wyatt. Huh. My brother and I are practically blood brothers, so his parents are my parents. Come on, this one's on me. Goddad, Godmom, order whatever you like. He was handsome, polite, and charming, which immediately made a good impression on Leo's parents. Only Anna was displeased. Who said you could call them Goddad and Godmom? They're mine. Wyatt was indignant. Why can't I? I call them on New Year's to wish them well, and Godmom answered. I've been calling them that ever since. Anna burst out laughing. Ha ha ha, you idiot. That was me who answered the phone. You were calling me Godmom. Wyatt was dumbfounded. What? Anna preened. Go on, son. Say Mom again for me. The two of them started bickering in the private room. Leo and Claire, used to their antics, ignored them and focused on ordering food. Robert and Susan, however, watched with surprise, exchanging curious glances. They had watched Anna grow up and thought of her as their own daughter. They knew her inside and out. For years, she had always been prim and proper in front of others. But aside from with their own son, this was the first time they had ever seen her let down her guard and show her true self to another man. Daily request for boosts and gifts. Robert and Susan exchanged another secret glance, their minds buzzing with speculation, but they didn't say anything out loud. Instead, Susan quietly pulled Claire aside to ask her daughter-in-law a few hushed questions. Claire responded in a low voice with a smile, and Susan's expression softened with understanding. She then looked at Wyatt with a new, appraising gaze. After a moment of scrutiny, she nodded, a look of satisfied approval on her face. Once the food arrived, they all began to eat and chat. Susan casually brought up a topic. Wyatt, are you still single? Oh, you and Anna, both of you are at that age, with such great prospects. You should really find someone and start dating. It was classic parental matchmaking. Wyatt paused, then smiled and waved his hand nonchalantly. I'm not in a rush, Godmom. My life, you see, has been like walking on. He was about to say thin ice, out of habit, but from across the table, Claire raised an eyebrow. Claire the demoness looked at her own slowly clenching fist as if lost in thought. My knuckles are feeling a little itchy. The heir to the Wei family fortune broke out in a cold sweat. He swallowed the rest of his sentence and forced a dry laugh. I was going to say like walking on Easy Street. Easy Street. Ha ha ha. On the other side, Anna pouted. I'm not in a rush either. Godmom, I told you, I've already lost the ability to love someone. Ow. Ow, 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 Godmom, gently, please. She didn't get to finish her sentence, either. Susan had reached over and grabbed her ear. You're just a young girl. What do you mean you've lost the ability to love, huh? All those years I doted on you were for nothing? What? You don't love your Godmom anymore either. Annie Cakes yelped as her ear was twisted. I do. I love you so much. Godmom, please be gentle. Thin Ice Bro and Lost Love Sis, their melancholy act cut short, were swiftly and mercilessly put in their place. Once they were both free, they let out a collective sigh of relief, grateful to have survived. They subconsciously glanced at each other, then quickly and unnaturally looked away. Only Claire caught the exchange, a faint smile playing on her lips. Their behavior, she thought, was remarkably similar to how she and a certain little idiot had acted before they finally got together. The thought warmed her heart. She turned to look at her boyfriend with a sweet, affectionate feeling, only to find the handsome young man still stuffing his face with gusto. Noticing her gaze, he looked up. "HM, what are you looking at?" The tender moment shattered. Claire, exasperated, gently kicked him under the table as punishment. "You pig. All you know how to do is eat." After lunch, they paid the bill and left the restaurant. It was just before 1 in the afternoon. The autumn sun shone brightly over the city, casting a dappled gold pattern on the sidewalk through the leaves of the trees. A gentle breeze was blowing. A short distance away, a group of high school students in uniforms, two couples it seemed, walked past holding hands, laughing and joking around. It was a beautiful picture of youthful exuberance. Robert and Susan watched them, sighing wistfully. So nice. Young people should seize their youth and love bravely. The comment seemed aimed at Wyatt and Anna. But a second later, the older couple couldn't help but glance at Leo and Claire, remembering the remote-controlled bed they'd seen in the master bedroom yesterday. They cleared their throats, then added with heartfelt sincerity, "But sometimes you shouldn't be too brave." Wyatt and Anna looked on, completely baffled. The power couple, however, felt a pang of guilt and nodded meekly. Soon after, it was time for them to part ways. Wyatt and Anna, by a stroke of coincidental bad luck, both had to work overtime that weekend and needed to head back. Annie Cakes said a reluctant goodbye to her godparents, promising to stay in touch and insisting that she would play tour guide for them once her work was done. Leo chimed in curiously. "You're working overtime every day. Are you ever going to finish all that work?" Anna's expression didn't change. "I could do it. If I can't finish the work, I can just get rid of the person who gave me the work." She glanced nonchalantly at Wyatt, a sly smile on her face. "Right, Wyatt?" The heir to the Way family fortune forced a laugh. "Ha ha, you're so funny, Anna." He laughed and wiped the sweat from his brow, his mind already racing. He had to call the manager at Aria Perfumes as soon as he got back. What was taking so long to fix one stupid elevator camera? Did they want him to die? After Wyatt and Anna left, it was just the four of them again. Susan decided to visit some of the famous local bakeries downtown for her market research, and Claire readily offered to accompany her. Jenna and Laura would meet up with them later. Meanwhile, Robert had just received confirmation that the shipment of block-headed figures had arrived at the logistics center. He wanted to go and inspect them. Leo, of course, offered to go with his dad. And so, the four of them split up. 20 minutes later, Leo and his father arrived at the FedEx distribution center downtown. Robert carefully inspected the shipment, confirming that none of the boxes were damaged, and breathed a sigh of relief. He signed the acceptance form and handed it to Leo. 5,000 figures delivered. From here on out, it's up to you, kid. Leo grinned. Don't worry. Just wait for your son to make you rich. This shipment would be split in two. One part would go to the Blockhead Workshop, and the other to Chloe Chu's maternity stores. For now, that was settled. Leo had planned to take his dad around the city, maybe see the waterfront or some other sites and take a few pictures. But Robert waved him off. No time for that. Your old man has important business to attend to. Curious, Leo asked what it was. He heard his dad was meeting some little brother he'd recently befriended. He offered, "Why don't I go with you?" Robert immediately shut him down. "You can't come. This is something only your old man can do." It was all for his son's future happiness. He, the father, was stepping up to the plate. The thought filled him with a great sense of paternal pride. But Leo was suspicious. He eyed his father. "What kind of little brother can I meet?" "Dad, be honest, is it a little brother or an old flame?" "Robert?" Question mark. The paternal pride vanished on the spot. A son like this might as well fend for himself. After shooing away his ungrateful son, Robert called his dear brother-in-law. They quickly agreed on a place to meet, and he hailed a cab and headed over. 20 minutes later, in the heart of Berkeley's CBD, Robert stood on a street corner line with towering skyscrapers, looking around. Soon, he spotted a familiar figure waving and striding toward him with a hearty smile. "Big brother, over here." Seeing his little brother, Robert's face broke into a wide grin. "Hey, it's been a while. I've missed you, little brother." As he spoke, he looked at his smiling brother-in-law, who was now standing in front of him. He noticed something and looked surprised. "What's wrong? You don't look so good." Charles Sterling paused, then smiled and waved it off. "It's nothing, just some trouble at home." The two brothers, separated since July, were finally reunited in Berkeley after several months. They greeted each other with warmth and enthusiasm. Robert had originally planned to take his cheap brother-in-law fishing, but in his rush to leave the LNS house that morning, he'd forgotten his gear. Charles consoled him, saying that if they couldn't go fishing, they might as well find a tea house to sit and catch up. They immediately agreed. Today, Chairman Sterling hadn't brought his trusted right-hand man along. More accurately, when a certain veteran heard the identity of the big brother his boss was meeting, his pupils quaked so violently he immediately requested a half-day of sick leave. So, there was no driver. Chairman Sterling drove his big brother to the tea house himself. This time, he was driving an ordinary Mercedes. Sitting in the passenger seat, Robert looked at the logo on the steering wheel and clicked his tongue. "Little brother, you've got quite the nest egg, huh?" Charles laughed it off. "It's nothing. Just making a little money. I actually have another car I usually drive, but it's not with me right now. Otherwise, I'll let you take it for a spin." Robert let out a dry cough, his expression unchanged. It's not that much a pity. When they arrived, the two brothers entered the tea house. Chairman Sterling warmly invited his big brother to sit in a private room. He expertly prepared the tea set, enthusiastically telling Robert about its history. He casually mentioned that he had an even better set, but for some reason, he couldn't find it yesterday. It was a shame, otherwise he could have let his big brother experience it. Robert thought back to the tea set his daughter-in-law had given him yesterday. He coughed again, his face still a perfect mask of composure. "It's all right. I'll just consider the thought as received." Naturally, Chairman Sterling didn't catch the true meaning behind his brother's words. He just gave Robert a thumbs up in admiration. "That's my big brother. So magnanimous. So open-minded." Robert glanced carefully at his cheap brother-in-law. "It's okay. You just need to be more open-minded in the future." Inside the private room, the tea was steeped and a fragrant steam filled the air. The two brothers sat, drinking tea and chatting about everything and nothing. Yet somehow, the two middle-aged men found common ground on every topic, talking with unrestrained joy. The gloom that had been hanging over Chairman Sterling's brow before he arrived had mostly lifted. He felt an even stronger kinship with his big brother. If they'd been drinking alcohol, he would have insisted they become sworn brothers. Robert waved his hands dismissively. "No need for that. No need at all. It might mess up the family relationships." Charles paused, confused. "What do you mean, mess them up?" Robert caught himself. "Oh, it's nothing. Here, drink your tea, drink your tea." The two brothers sat in the tea house all afternoon. As evening approached, they reluctantly said their goodbyes at the entrance. After watching his big brother's taxi disappear down the street, the veteran who had conveniently taken a half-day of sick leave seemed to have made a full recovery and arrived to drive Chairman Sterling home. The Mercedes' engine purred to life. From the driver's seat, Mr. Joe snuck a glance at his boss in the rearview mirror and asked cautiously, "Mr. Sterling, your meeting with your big brother did go well?" Charles smiled. "It did. It went great." Thinking back on his delightful conversation with his big brother, Charles couldn't help but sigh with satisfaction. To find such a kindred spirit at this stage in life was truly rare, especially a reliable one his own age. Infinitely better than that last scoundrel of a punk he befriended. He and his big brother really could talk about anything. There was nothing they couldn't share. The only slightly odd thing was that his brother had somehow produced a piece of paper. It seemed to be the pledge they'd written when they were drunk in Northwood, and asked him to sign it again and leave a thumbprint. The pledge was an agreement that, if the opportunity arose, they would become in-laws. But the thing was, his daughter already had that punk kid for a boyfriend. His future in-law was probably going to be that punk kid's punk dad. How could there be any chance of him becoming family with his dear big brother? The thought made Chairman Sterling shake his head with regret. However, he had become curious about his big brother's son, who he'd heard had also just started college. He'd suggested that his brother bring his nephew to meet him sometime. He was the chairman of Sterling Holdings, after all. He could probably help the kid out in Berkeley. But his brother had shaken his head vigorously, saying it wasn't a good time, that his son was shy and didn't like meeting people. Thinking back on it now, Charles chuckled. He figured his brother was just being modest. Although he hadn't met his nephew, he believed the apple didn't fall far from the tree. If the father was such a perfect match for him, the son couldn't be too bad. "Don't you think so, Joe?" Chairman Sterling asked his right-hand man. From the driver's seat, the veteran's pupils quaked imperceptibly. "Why, yes, sir. Indeed." After returning to the Concorde, Unit 1, Charles dismissed his right-hand man for the night and got out of the car. He rode the elevator up to his apartment. He stepped inside, changed into his slippers, and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window in the living room. Night was falling. He gazed out at the sea of city lights, his expression growing somber, his eyes flickering with complex emotions. His big brother had noticed his troubled expression that afternoon. When asked, he had brushed it off. He hadn't brought it up during their chat at the tea house either, because no matter how much of a kindred spirit his brother was, some things were family matters, and this was too complicated to explain to an outsider. He'd received a message from D. C. He thought back to the phone call he'd taken in his office. That sharp, authoritative voice of the old woman, a voice he hadn't heard in over a decade. Charles just shook his head with a bitter smile. Even with the power that woman in D. C. held, Charles Sterling, at his current status, was not afraid. In fact, that once powerful family had been in decline for the past decade, a shadow of its former glory. But in the end, it was his wife's family, and his only precious daughter's maternal relatives. Some things were hard to stop. The main plot is about to accelerate. I hope you can handle it. Daily request for boosts and gifts. Robert and Susan Wallace only stayed in Berkeley for 2 days. On Monday morning, they prepared to head back to Northwood. Over the short weekend, they hadn't done much sightseeing. Instead, they'd spent most of their time at the L&S house, cooking for and cleaning up after their son and daughter-in-law. Leo and Claire felt a bit guilty and tried to persuade them to stay longer. Mom, Dad, why don't you stay a few more days? We haven't even taken you to the coast yet. Susan shook her head. No need. Just coming here and seeing that you're both doing well is enough to put our minds at ease. We need to get back to the bakery in Northwood. Besides, if we really open a branch here, there will be plenty of chances to come back. Susan's entrepreneurial spirit was as strong as ever. But before she left, she didn't forget to pull her son aside. She slipped a new bank card into his hand, telling him she'd deposited some extra money, and gave him careful instructions. Be frugal when you need to be, but don't be afraid to spend. And don't be cheap with Claire. Your dad and I weren't able to provide much before, but now we're making money. We'll save up more for you. Try to buy you a place in Berkeley, too. Leo was touched. His parents were in their middle years. It wasn't really about ambition or entrepreneurial dreams. It was about giving their child a better future and a sense of security. His heart warmed, and he was about to say something when Susan hesitated and whispered, Mom doesn't know much about these things. It's the first time I've seen furniture like that in the big city. But that bed in your room, 7 levels seems a bit intense, don't you think? You should take it easy, son. Start with level 4 or 5. Don't just jump straight to 6 or 7. It sounds terrifying. A boy your age needs to take care of his body. Leo, Mom, let's not have this conversation. His ears were about to bleed. It wasn't just Susan. Robert also had to return to Northwood to urge the factory workers to speed things up. He had seen Isabella Zhao's design drafts at Mako Entertainment yesterday. The remaining 15,000 blank figures at the factory needed to be sculpted according to those designs. And if this first batch sold well, the factory would need to quickly ramp up production for a second batch. But as his father was packing, Leo noticed him carefully tucking a piece of paper, a note of some kind, into his pocket as if it were a precious treasure. Leo craned his neck curiously. What's that? A love letter from an old flame, Dad? Robert unceremoniously shoved his son's head away. Love letter my ass. This is a marriage contract. Leo gasped. Dad, bigamy is illegal in this country. His father shot him a look. What do you know? There will come a day when you will thank your old man for this. With that, he strutted off, looking as proud as if he had accomplished something monumental. Robert and Susan left without much fuss, not even letting their kids drive them to the train station. However, the 2 pretty bakery employees who had come with them didn't leave. They were about to, but Claire stopped them. It was a last-minute idea from Bertha Sue. The Blockhead Workshop is opening in a couple of days. We're going to be short-staffed. The first day is bound to be packed so they can stay and help out. It was true. The workshop hadn't officially opened yet, but during the loud and conspicuous renovation, they had already printed and distributed a mountain of flyers. Word had spread like wildfire across Berkeley's old campus that the single slaughterhouse couple was opening a shop. Everyone was planning to come and check it out on opening day. Although they had the 10 students from Northwood High as part-time staff and their roommates to help out, none of them were professionals. They lacked experience in retail and customer service. That's where the 2-star employees from Sweet Return Bakery, with their top-tier looks and skills, would be a huge asset. Leo wholeheartedly agreed with his girlfriend's proposal. And so, that morning, just as Jenna and Laura were excitedly packing to go home, they were hit with the devastating news. They had to stay in Berkeley for a few more days. Seeing Claire's smiling face as she delivered the good news, the thought of spending 2 more days in close proximity with the boss's wife made their worlds collapse. After dragging their luggage back to their room, they nearly burst into tears. Mom, Berkeley is terrifying. We're never coming back. On Tuesday, The renovation of the Blockhead Workshop was officially complete. Uncle 16 enthusiastically invited Leo and Claire over for a final inspection. They were both extremely satisfied with the result. Bertha Sue was so impressed that she asked for Uncle 16's business card and promised him the contract for decorating their future wedding venue. Come to think of it, if Mr. Chien was the best man, Master Sijin was the officiant, and Uncle 16 was the wedding decorator. The future nuptials of the power couple were going to be a gilded phoenix family affair. 6 plus 4 plus 16. That was 26 gold already. The gold standard was rising. On Wednesday, the Blockhead Workshop officially opened for business. They held a grand opening ceremony at noon, just as Berkeley students were getting out of class and looking for a place to eat lunch. A string of loud firecrackers drew them to the corner of the commercial street, which was already packed with people. The first thing they saw was the striking sign above the newly renovated storefront, the Blockhead Workshop. In the bottom right corner was a cute cartoon logo of a couple of blockheaded figures, looking sweet and perfectly matched. Below that, in flowing script, were the letters L and S. Anyone could tell it stood for lethal and savage. The firecrackers popped and crackled. The entrance was flanked by a sea of flower baskets, apparently from neighboring businesses. A closer look revealed congratulatory banners from the Gilded Phoenix Grocery, Gilded Phoenix Barbershop, Gilded Phoenix Land Center, Gilded Phoenix Flower Shop. The Berkeley students gasped. Holy crap, why are they all Gilded Phoenix? It was then they realized that the commercial street by their east gate seemed to be completely dominated by the Gilded Phoenix chain. It didn't take a genius to figure out who was behind it all. Mr. Chien had even hired a dragon and lion dance troupe from somewhere, and they were performing energetically in front of the shop, adding to the festive, explosive atmosphere and successfully piquing the curiosity of the students who had gathered to see what all the noise was about. Once the curiosity of the simple, pure-hearted university students was piqued, the rest was easy. The moment the opening ceremony ended, everyone surged into the store, eager to see what was inside. Upon entering, the students were once again stunned by the sight before them. The interior, designed by the two reborn protagonists with inspiration from trendy toy stores of the future and perfectly executed by Uncle 16's team over 2 weeks, was now on full display. It was high-end, stylish, and avant-garde. The space was clearly divided into 4 sections: a front counter, a crafting area, a display area, and a lounge/photo op area. 2 10-meter-long crafting islands stood side by side, piled high with blank blockheaded figures and equipped with more than 20 different palettes of liquid paint. They gleamed under the cool, polygonal metal pendant lights, which had a high-tech feel. The display area, located by the floor-to-ceiling windows, showcased over 20 finished figures, each one unique, some cute and goofy, others cool and handsome, and all eye-catching. The Berkeley students felt a little intimidated. The decor looked so expensive. How much would an experience here cost? They cautiously inquired. What? $25 a pop? The paint is free, and the staff gives free guidance? And for the first 3 days, Berkeley students get a 20% discount. The intimidation vanished instantly, replaced by a surge of bravado. That's nothing. Give me one. Many of the students had initially been unimpressed by the blank figures. But when they saw the finished products in the display area, designed by Leo and Claire's roommates and friends, with varying levels of skill, even Marco's abstract creation looking so ugly it was cute, their interest and confidence soared. Is that one Marco's? If Marco can make something that cool, so can we. Business was booming from the very first moment. This was where the part-time employees from Northwood High came in. They were swamped, guiding customers, teaching them the process, and explaining the concept. Though the high schoolers lacked experience, the 2-star employees from Sweet Return Bakery proved invaluable. Jenna and Laura moved gracefully through the crowd, greeting each customer with a warm smile, their composure unwavering. The appearance of the 2 beautiful employees also made many of the male students' eyes light up. Holy crap, the girls working here are gorgeous. Some of the guys who had just been planning to check it out and leave, who a second ago were proudly striding toward the door thinking, what's this Blockhead Workshop? I'm a man of steel, no one's getting a dime out of me. Abruptly stopped, turned around without missing a beat, and walked back in. But then again, there's no harm in trying it out. Excuse me, miss, how do you make these? Can you teach me hand in hand? I'll buy 2. Business at the Blockhead Workshop was explosive from day one. The news spread through the Berkeley campus like wildfire. At first, students heard, what? The single slaughterhouse couple opened a shop to sell their PDA. It became, what? The power couple is selling little figures? And then the rumors got ridiculous. No way. Is it true? The power couple had a baby with a square head. Amidst the chaos of true and false information, someone finally clarified that it was a DIY workshop for block-headed figures with staff to guide you, and it was affordable and high quality. But there was too much information. The students couldn't remember it all. They forgot the beginning, forgot the end, and only remembered one thing. What? There are two beautiful shop girls in heels and stockings. And then the male students erupted, swarming the place. That's just how single college guys are. Business at the workshop boomed. The part-time staff from Northwood High were worked to the bone. Even working in shifts, they were nearly collapsing from exhaustion by the end of the day. Jenna and Laura had it even worse. As the most experienced employees, they bore the brunt of the enthusiastic tidal wave of customers. They were so busy they didn't even have time for a sip of water all day. Their throats raw, teetering on their high heels, they could barely stand by the end of it. But they gritted their teeth and persevered with incredible professionalism. They worked like that for 3 straight days, their contribution immense. Leo and Claire felt so bad that before sending the two of them back to Northwood, they gave them large red envelopes filled with cash as a thank you. Come back and visit again soon. Or better yet, quit your jobs at the bakery and come work for us full-time. The offer made Jenna and Laura jump. They left the envelopes behind, grabbed their luggage, and scrambled into a taxi, slamming the door shut. No, they need us at the bakery. Bye, Junior. Bye, Mrs. Boss. Driver, step on it. Go, go, go. The last part was almost a sob. They watched as the taxi sped away, the two girls inside looking like they wanted to pick up the car and run with it. People grow through experience. After the chaotic first few days, the part-time staff from Northwood High finally got the hang of their jobs. They became adept at handling the workflow and the customers. Jenna and Laura, the 2-star employees, had been a huge help. Though they had fled in a panic, during their time at the workshop, they had been nothing but professional, passing on their experience to their younger colleagues. However, their departure did have a slight impact on business. Many of the students who came later had been drawn by the rumors of the beautiful shop girls. They were inevitably disappointed to find that the 2 girls in heels and stockings were gone. But a small problem like that was no match for the clever Leo Hammer Wallace. The beauty effect? He was an expert at that. And when it came to beautiful women, he had plenty of resources. Starting on the 4th day, he implemented a new strategy. The girls from room 205, Jade, Molly, and Quinn, would take turns as guest manager of the day. They didn't have to do much. Just sit at the front counter and be a living, breathing advertisement. It was an instant success, reigniting the enthusiasm of the student customers. They no longer had time to mourn the departure of the previous 2 beauties. Holy crap, the new guest managers are all gorgeous too. The girls from room 205 were happy to help, finding the experience new and interesting. But Leon and Marco were not happy. Leon slammed his hand on the table. No way, I have to go with Molly. I can't let those wolves on campus get any ideas. Marco slammed his hand on the table too. Same here. Leon looked at him, confused. I'm going to protect my girlfriend. Why are you so worked up, Marco? Who are you protecting? Marco nearly choked. I'm helping you protect Molly. Daily request for boosts and gifts, a new week, a miserable business trip. The guest manager of the day system was now in effect. The first day was Molly's shift. The little novelist arrived at the Blockhead workshop in high spirits, settled into a chair behind the checkout counter, propped her feet up on a stool, and started reading a book. She greeted customers as they came and went, chatted with anyone she knew, and when she got bored of reading, she'd wander around the shop, offering sage advice. She'd even command the part-time staff from Northwood to pour tea or offer snacks to the customers, thoroughly enjoying her newfound authority. Leon sat beside her like a hawk, gnawing on a date cake and watching every male customer in the store with suspicion. He wouldn't allow any guy with ulterior motives to talk to his girlfriend for more than 3 sentences. Marco also sat nearby, blankly eating a date cake, his mind elsewhere. Even so, the date cake guy was deeply moved. Marco, you're a true friend. So loyal. Marco forced a laugh. Ha, of course. We're all family here, just helping out. Having made such a grand declaration, the next day, when it was Jade's turn to be manager, Marco had to grit his teeth and show up again. He used the same righteous excuse. We're all family. Can't let you handle this all by yourself, Jade. Just tell me what you need. Jade glanced at Marco, the light glinting off her glasses as if in deep thought. She pushed him up her nose and didn't hold back. All right, I'll take you up on that. And for the rest of the day, she worked Marco like a dog, sending him here and there until he was on the verge of collapse. Manager Jade, however, was having a blast. It wasn't that she actually wanted to boss him around. It was purely for the sake of rigorous scientific inquiry. She wanted to see just how far Marco's dedication to his family would go. She almost pushed him to his breaking point. On the third day, Lily Lu arrived. The it girl of the humanities department was also there to join the fun and help out as a guest manager. When she saw Marco in the shop, she was surprised. "Marco, weren't you here the last 2 days? You're here again today?" Marco, still aching from yesterday's ordeal, winced. Yeah, we're all family, so it's only reasonable for me to help out." And so, he endured another full day of hard labor, working even harder than the part-time staff. The high schoolers were amazed. Does Marco have to be so diligent? Did he secretly get paid double? Marco, painfully rubbing his lower back, tried to stand tall. "It's nothing. Just happy to help out for free." On the fourth day, it was Claire's turn. Leo, who had come to help his girlfriend, was surprised to see the exhausted figures stumbling in. "Whoa, Marco, you've been here for 4 days straight." Isabella Zhao's position as his #1 workhorse was under threat. Marco, aching all over, forced a smile that looked more like a grimace. Yeah, we're all friends. It's what I should do." Even Claire couldn't help but laugh. "All right, go home and rest for a day. The two of us can handle it here. Quinn's turn is tomorrow. If you want to help, you can come back then." Her words were like a pardon from the governor. Marco was so moved he nearly burst into tears. "Bertha, then, you two take care. I'll be going now." He turned and fled, rushing out the door so quickly he almost tripped. "Be careful," Leo called after him kindly. He watched Marco's rapidly retreating figure, then exchanged a knowing smile with Claire. What was that saying? Taking pictures with everyone, just to be in a photo with one person. He had helped out all these friends, all for the sake of having a legitimate reason to be by one particular girl's side. When Marco put his mind to it, his foolishness was actually quite romantic. Leo thought for a moment and suggested to his girlfriend, "Let's not come tomorrow. Give Marco and Quinn some space." Claire nodded with a smile. Reasonable. On the fifth day, the Blockhead Workshop welcomed its fifth guest manager. When Quinn arrived for her shift, Marco, who had rested for a full day, appeared, looking completely refreshed. "Well, what a coincidence. It's your turn today, Quinn. I've got nothing to do today, so I'll keep you company." He was already daydreaming about the wonderful day they would spend together. The next second, he stepped into the shop, only to see a strange, complicated expression on Quinn's face. Confused, he looked around and was stunned to see Jade, Molly, Leon, Lily Lu, and even Dylan all sitting there. The whole gang was here. They all waved enthusiastically at him. "Marco's here. Hey, thanks for all your help the past few days. We came to keep you company today. Don't mention it, we're all family. It's what we should do." Except for Dylan. He just felt left out the past few days and came along to avoid being ostracized. Marco. His vision went black. His world had just collapsed. The first 5 days were the girls from room 205 plus Lily Lu. On the 6th and 7th days, Leo called in his two most trusted workhorses. His two top generals from Mako Entertainment, Gibberish Girl and Clueless Zhao. 7 days, 7 different beautiful guest managers, a new one each day. As a new freshman class, it girl, Yvonne Moreau's appearance at the workshop caused another campus-wide sensation. Countless freshmen flocked to the store. Even the Northwood High boys working there, led by Alex Zhang, were so excited they could barely stand still, constantly stealing glances at her. Yvonne, however, was a diligent manager. The moment she arrived, she started strictly supervising the employees, telling them to work hard and not get distracted. That evening, she even gave Leo a serious report. "Senior, the male employees at your shop are a bit lazy. Next time, I'll create a performance review chart to grade them and improve everyone's efficiency." As always, she was earnest and driven. In contrast, Isabella Zhao had a completely different style. But when she arrived, the commotion she caused was even greater than Yvonne's. Many of the upperclassmen on the old campus were shocked. "Whoa, Isabella Zhao from the art department. She's like a mythical creature. You never see her around school. How did they get her to come?" Another wave of students rushed over, eager to catch a glimpse of her. In front of her adoring fans, Isabella maintained an elegant, reserved, and artistic demeanor, earning a chorus of praise. But behind the scenes, the clueless girl was like a curious child, darting around the shop, oohing and awing at everything. "Wow, the boss's new venture. He's so amazing." Then she saw the display wall filled with block-headed figures designed by Leo, Claire, and their friends. She looked at each one, finally settling on the couple's matching set. She secretly glanced around to make sure no one was looking, then sneakily moved her own custom figure next to theirs. She nudged it a little closer, then stepped back to admire her work. She nodded in satisfaction. That's more like it. She was the boss's #1, most trusted general. After all, her figure deserved to be close to the boss and boss's wife's. It showed her status. Reasonable, putting aside all the little schemes of the staff and managers. After a week of being open, the Blockhead Workshop had successfully and completely made a name for itself. Word spread beyond Berkeley's old campus, reaching the new campus and even other universities in the area. Students came from all over to see what this new blockheaded figure craze was all about. And, of course, to catch a glimpse of the 7 different beautiful guest managers who were on duty for a week without a single repeat. It was purely incidental, of course. But at the end of the day, the rotating guest managers were just a marketing gimmick. To keep customers coming back and truly build a brand, it all came down to the core DIY gameplay of the blockheaded figures themselves. And it turned out there was a definite market for this little hobby among college students. For $25, you could design and create your very own exclusive figure. The process was simple and easy to learn. For couples, it was even better. The figures they designed together held a special sentimental value, like a token of their love. To capitalize on this, the Blockhead Workshop launched a brand new marketing campaign specifically for couples. The Lover's Blockhead, a custom service exclusively for student couples. For $131.40, a couple could purchase and design a set of high-quality, premium lovers figures. They would then sign a contract, which the shop would file away. If, after 1 year, the couple was still together, they could return with their contract and their exclusive figures to receive a $52.10 love bonus and an official reasonable certificate personally made and awarded by the shop's owners. The moment this campaign was announced, it caused a massive sensation throughout Berkeley and the surrounding universities. The college students of late 2008 had never seen such a brilliant marketing scheme. Couple after couple was completely hooked, their hearts aflutter. It was so romantic. At that age, who didn't long for a love that would last? Vows and promises were just words. But now, they had a chance to prove their feelings for each other. They had to jump at the chance. A little over $100? Charge it. And so, business at the Blockhead Workshop surged once again, capturing a huge share of the university couple market. The campaign was so successful that even the marketing professor in Berkeley's advertising program was blown away. Incredible. The person who came up with this is a genius. With that kind of marketing savvy, if they were to teach a class, I'd be on my knees taking notes. All of you learned from this. Leo Wallace, I'm talking to you. Why are you daydreaming in class again? Get up here and analyze this for me. It wasn't just the professor. Even Leo and Claire's close friends were amazed. That really is a top-tier marketing plan. How you two come up with this stuff? Faced with the praise, the 2 reborn protagonists exchanged a slightly guilty look, forcing themselves to remain calm. It just came to us. It was all Leo's/Claire's idea. As they expertly shifted the credit, they both glanced at each other with a hint of suspicion. It was strange. One of them would mention a vague idea, and the other would immediately grasp it and help flesh it out as if the other person had the same fully formed plan in their head. Could it be? Could this be the telepathic connection between lovers? It's so reasonable. The success of the Blockhead Workshop was also fueled by online promotion. The rating system on Happy Nest had officially launched and was being rolled out according to plan. Following the Yelp model from his previous life, Leo had the company's marketing director, Penny Fong, personally lead a team to travel and negotiate with numerous restaurant chains and independent shops, constantly adding them to the platform. The rating and review function was an instant hit with users. Before, finding a good place to eat was often a gamble. Now, they had a data-driven rating system to reference. The various restaurants on the commercial street near Berkeley's old campus had also been added to the system, mainly because Mr. Chien had led the charge. His Gilded Phoenix chain accounted for nearly half the businesses on the street. The Blockhead Workshop was no exception. After being added, customers who visited would leave reviews and ratings on Happy Nest. Its popularity soared, and the reviews were overwhelmingly positive. The Blockhead Workshop rating, 9.4. Top review. Great place for a date. A new manager every day, and they're all gorgeous. Top review 2. Blockhead Workshop. More like Campus Beauty Workshop. Top review 3. Guys, I discovered a secret. All the employees here seem to be from Northwood High. Top review 4. Knives Out. Follow me. To hell with the Northwood dogs. Although the comments started to go off the rails, it didn't stop the workshop's online popularity from exploding, which in turn drove even more foot traffic. But as everything seemed to be going perfectly, An undercurrent was quietly stirring beneath the surface. For instance, far away in Portland, the star agent from the Quad, who was diligently working as a corporate spy, finally made a shocking discovery after 6 months of hard labor at Mako Entertainment's Portland branch. This Kevin Zhao is a fake. The phone slipped from her hand. Serafina Vance froze, completely petrified. From the dropped receiver, the cheerful voice of a certain art department head from the Berkeley headquarters was still chattering away. "Oh yeah, Serafina, you're just finding this out now? Our boss has been in Berkeley this whole time. The one at your branch is obviously an imposter. A smokescreen, you know? Oh, but this is a secret. I was the only one in the whole company who knew before. The fact that you found out too means the boss must really value you. We'll be best friends from now on." And for instance, a certain arrogant and incompetent scion of the Sterling family, after being carefully manipulated by certain individuals, had finally fallen into their trap. In a newly opened bar in a bustling area of downtown Berkeley, Graham Sterling, flanked by Ching Rue and Zeke K, looked around at the lavish, decadent decor, nodded in satisfaction, and asked, "So this is it?" Ching Rue threw a friendly arm around his shoulder. "This is it. From now on, this is our turf." Graham shrugged his hand off, his attitude haughty. "No, it's my turf." Ching Rue's face was all smiles. Yes, of course, your turf, Mr. Sterling." But when he lowered his head, he couldn't hide the mocking sneer in his eyes. And for instance, on an ordinary Friday evening before the weekend, Claire Sterling, who had been sitting in on a meeting at the Sterling Holdings headquarters, was unexpectedly asked to stay behind by the chairman himself. Father and daughter returned to the chairman's office on the 37th floor. The solid wooden door closed behind them, and no one knew what was said inside. Only the veteran bodyguard, standing guard outside the door, managed to catch a few fragments of the conversation. He heard the chairman's weary sigh and attempts at persuasion, and then his young Mrs. voice suddenly dropping to an icy chill. "My business is not for them to dictate. I will not see them. Thanks to the aptly named user for the Boost good name. The main plot is picking up speed, recycling all the foreshadowing daily requests for boosts and gifts." That evening, Leo was also in the city. First, he stopped by the mall where Chloe Chu's maternity shop, Mia's Maternity, was located. He had some business to discuss with the single mother, who, though over 30, possessed a mature, elegant charm. He also made sure to bring along a few years' worth of homework assignments and workbooks for little Mia. Of course, the main topic was the supply of blockhead figurines. It wasn't just that the blockhead workshop on the street near the old Berkeley campus had opened successfully at Mia's Maternity. After discussing it with Leo, Chloe had set aside a special parent-child activity space, which had been converted into a DIY blockhead station right on schedule. The first shipment of 1,500 blank figurines had arrived. In just 1 week, more than half had already been sold. The young mothers were wildly enthusiastic, and their purchasing power was terrifying. Seeing their own children's adorable, engrossed faces as they played with the liquid paints and figurines, and then seeing the final creations their kids made with their own hands. When a child would joyfully hold up their creation like a trophy and say in a sweet, milky voice, "Mommy, this is for you," the young mothers' hearts would simply melt. Even if the kid's DIY blockhead was a bizarre, abstract piece of art that could rival the boss's own creations, it didn't stop the mothers from cherishing it, unable to put down the first gift their child had ever given them. Some even got carried away, imagining that if their 3-year-old could already design something so creative, wouldn't they grow up to be a great artist? They had to be encouraged. They had to be supported. Buy more. In short, the blockhead DIY business at the maternity shop was doing just as well as the blockhead workshop itself. Chloe was thrilled. When Leo came by, she immediately started negotiating, asking to order at least 5,000 more blank figurines. "And this is just one of my stores," she said. "I have 6 or 7 others. I've already got people starting renovations on 3 of them to create parent-child spaces. We'll set up DIY stations there, too. Once they're all done, forget 5,000. We could move 10,000 a month." Leo naturally smiled and agreed. A couple of days ago, when he saw how explosive the sales were, he had already prepared. He called his father back in Northwood and told him to have the factory work overtime. No more slacking off for the employees. They needed to get back to work producing a new batch of blank blockheads. The second batch would be 50,000 units. And it had to be fast. Quality, quantity, and speed were all required. What was that? The order was too rushed? Could they slow down a bit? That's what his own father had asked. But being his son didn't mean he was going to go easy on him. Fat chance. Robert Wallace was in his late 40s, the prime of his working life. How could he even think about slacking off? After leaving the maternity shop, Leo had planned to go pick up his girlfriend and head home. He sent Bertha Sue a text, but didn't get a reply after a few minutes. She was probably still in a meeting. Leo thought for a moment and decided he might as well stop by the Mako Entertainment headquarters to check on things. He sent Claire another text to let her know. He hailed a cab on the street, gave the address, and headed for Kongping Road. He arrived at the office shortly after. Yvonne Moreau wasn't in today, but even without Gibberish Girl's supervision, everyone was still working diligently. The art team's focus had recently shifted to designing and creating new blockhead figurines. Their desks were covered in them. They had already designed a wide variety of styles. There were cute, stylized versions of historical figures, warriors from classic novels, and even famous folk heroes. The quality was clearly several tiers above the simple DIY creations the average customer made with liquid paints. Isabella Zhao, the department head and former it girl of the humanities department, was also at her desk, though she seemed to be slacking off a bit. He couldn't tell who she was messaging, but she looked awfully cheerful. Leo walked over and glanced at the chat window on her screen. Isabella nearly jumped out of her skin. "Boss, when did you get here?" Leo answered casually. "Right around the time you started goofing off." "Goofing off?" Isabella's face went pale. "Who's goofing off?" "Not me. I wasn't." "Boss, don't make things up. I was just chatting with one of our girls at the Portland branch." Leo was slightly surprised. "The Portland branch?" he asked, and found out she was talking about Serafina Vance. He recognized the name. Kevin Zhao had mentioned her several times, praising her highly. Yeah, she's super hardworking, just like me." Isabella nodded vigorously, puffing out her chest with pride. "We've been getting along great lately. She asked me for advice about how things work at headquarters all the time. She even asked about you, boss. I sang your praises. See how loyal I am." She shamelessly tried to score some points. Leo nodded in admiration. "Very loyal." Then his tone shifted. "But you're still getting docked $5 for slacking off. Rewards and punishments were to be kept separate. Slacking off meant a fine. Loyalty could be rewarded with one of Chef Sterling's cookies. $5. Isabella looked like her world was ending. "No, boss, please." Leaving the it girl to her dramatic despair, Leo strolled into the R&D department, hands behind his back. For once, Wyatt Way was actually at the office today. Leo walked in to say hello. The heir to the Way family looked up from his desk, saw Leo, and immediately stood up with a warm smile. "Bro, you're here." Leo smiled back. "Yeah, just checking on project progress. Looks like you just came from your own company. Hey, what happened to your foot?" He had noticed that Wyatt seemed to be favoring one leg as he stood up. Wyatt froze for a second, then quickly straightened up and forced a laugh. "It's nothing. I just accidentally got stepped on 5, 6, 7, or 8 times in the elevator. Haha, just an accident. An accident." There was a strange, pained quality to his forced smile. 5, 6, 7, or 8 times? Leo found that odd. The elevator at your company must be pretty crowded. He didn't press the issue. He chatted with Wyatt for a while about the development progress of Heavenly Tactics. 20 minutes later, after discussing some details and revisions, Leo left the R&D office. As he was about to leave the company, he saw Claire walking in through the main entrance. He paused, then a smile spread across his face as he walked over to meet her. "All done with work? Why didn't you say anything? I was about to come get you." Claire smiled back, took her boyfriend's hand, and, under the shocked, peeking gazes of the Mako employees, boldly planted a kiss on his cheek. "Just finished. I saw your text. It's no trouble for me to come here. Saves you a trip." Then, as if remembering something, she asked, "Were you just in the R&D office?" Leo, holding his girlfriend's hand and ready to leave, nodded. "Yeah, Wyatt's here today. I was talking to him about the game." Claire's expression changed. "Punching bag is here." Her eyebrows relaxed, and she flashed her boyfriend a smile. "Perfect. I'm going to go say hi." She let go of Leo's hand. With elegant, unhurried steps, she walked toward the R&D office. She pushed the door open and closed it behind her. First, the sound of Wyatt's surprised yelp came from inside. "Claire the Demoness, what are you doing here?" Bro, help me." As Claire Sterling gracefully walked into the R&D office, she was followed by the adoring gazes of the Mako Entertainment employees. Their boss could be a bit of a heartless capitalist at times, but the boss's wife was the picture of nobility and elegance, down to every last strand of her hair. It made one sigh in admiration. As expected of the boss's wife. She even comes to the office just to say a special hello to Project Leadway. So down to earth. Even as the pained cries of a certain Way family heir, punctuated by the heavy thuds and bangs of something, or someone, hitting the floor, echoed from within the office, the employees outside couldn't suppress their admiration. As expected of the boss's wife. Even her greetings are so firm and powerful, so full of impact. A moment later, the cries for help ceased. It was so quiet you might have wondered if the person inside was even breathing anymore. The office door opened again, and a refreshed-looking Claire walked out, taking her boyfriend's hand. "All right, let's go." As Leo was led away by his girlfriend, he reminded her, Wyatt has a rescue card. Claire nodded cheerfully. "I know. I've been counting. His monthly subscription just expired today. You should remind him to renew it later." Leo's eyes lit up. Reasonable. After the lethal couple left the company, a disheveled Wyatt Way, heir to the Way fortune, emerged from the R&D office, clinging to the doorframe for support. He looked up and saw a group of his subordinates staring at him curiously. He cleared his throat and waved a hand. "Nothing to see here. Back to work." Isabella Zhao sidled up to him, looked at his battered state, and nodded knowingly. "The boss's wife got you with a shoulder throw, didn't she?" Wyatt glanced at her. "How'd you know?" The former it girl puffed out her chest proudly. "She's thrown me before, too. Not just anyone gets that kind of treatment, She was actually proud of it. She was even getting excited, ready to share her experiences with Wyatt. "Was this your first time? How was it?" "Let me tell you, the boss's wife is the real deal. She looks so gentle, but she's incredibly strong." Wyatt's mouth twitched. "I know. She trained on me." Isabella's eyes widened in surprise. "She's thrown you before? How many times?" Wyatt nodded, a wistful look on his face. 1,362 times. Isabella? ? Isabella. Ignoring the it girl, whose jaw had dropped into a perfect O, Wyatt looked toward the company entrance, a thoughtful expression on his face. They were childhood friends. He was used to getting beaten up by her. At this point, their sparring was just playing around. With how sturdy he was now, a shoulder throw was just good for his circulation. In fact, if he went too long without one, he started to feel an itch, almost like he missed it. But that was the thing. Because they were childhood friends who knew each other inside and out, he was keenly aware of her moods and temperament. He could pick up on the subtle signs when something was off. Wyatt's eyes narrowed in thought. Today, my friend was in a genuinely bad mood. A really bad mood. The last time he'd seen her like this was probably many years ago. He snapped out of his thoughts and shook his head, preparing to go back to his office. He accidentally put weight on his injured foot and hissed in pain, stumbling. Isabella, quick on her feet, helped steady him. "Whoa, your foot is injured too. Did the boss's wife do that?" The third-generation heir gritted his teeth. "No, it was a rebellious female in turn." Evening traffic in the city was a nightmare. On the way home, the lethal couple sat in the back of a taxi. Holding his girlfriend's hand, Leo asked casually, "Why so late today? Did the meeting at Sterling Holdings run over?" Claire turned to look at him and smiled slightly. "No, we just talked about some other things after the meeting. Nothing important." She brushed it off lightly, offering no further details. That night, at the L&S house, just before bed, Leo came out of the master bathroom to see that the sliding door to the balcony was open. On the balcony, Claire stood leaning against the railing in a thin nightgown, staring up at the starry sky, lost in thought. When she came back to her senses, she realized the jacket had been draped over her shoulders. Claire turned instinctively to see her boyfriend's smiling face. "What's wrong?" "Bad mood." Claire didn't deny it, just raised an eyebrow. "How could you tell?" Leo grinned. "I heard it. When you said hello to Wyatt today, you hit him harder than usual." Claire's eyes widened in realization, and then she couldn't help but smile. Reasonable, but after the smile faded, she fell silent again. The balcony was quiet once more. After a moment, Claire seemed to consider something before finally looking at Leo again. "It's something, but my mind is a mess right now. I haven't figured out how to say it." Leo didn't hesitate. He nodded. "Then don't say it yet." But he paused, looking at his girlfriend, and smiled again. "Just remember one thing. You can always count on me, no matter what." Claire froze. She looked up at her boyfriend's handsome face, at the gentle smile he wore. It made her smile too, her eyes shimmering with warmth. I know." Without realizing it, the master and mistress of the single slaughterhouse were leaning against each other on the balcony, locked in a gentle embrace. Under the starry night sky, the atmosphere was serene and warm. Until a moment later, a certain handsome fellow broke the silence with a righteous declaration. "If you're in a bad mood, maybe we should go back to bed and have some fun." Claire paused. She looked at her boyfriend, a playful curve on her lips, her eyes smoldering. "Okay, but I'm in a really bad mood today. 1 or 2 rounds of fun won't be enough." Then the girl rose on her tiptoes, leaned in, and whispered something in his ear. The next moment, the color drained from Leo's face. "How many times?" The next day, Saturday, Morning at the LNS house. The aroma of breakfast filled the living room. The male master of the house sat at the dining table, plowing through a mountain of fried eggs. Nearby, the fat-headed parrot flapped its wings and waddled past, giving its king, Dad, a sidelong glance. TSK. It was a sound of pure disdain. The parrot waddled away. Leo shot a glare. It's for protein. What do you know about it? Comforting one's girlfriend was, indeed, hard work. But thinking of his girlfriend sleeping soundly upstairs in their bed, a small smile touched Leo's lips. He shook his head, bringing his thoughts back to the present, ready to continue refueling. His phone rang. He pulled it out and saw the caller ID, David Chung. Leo was a little surprised, but he quickly answered. The moment he put the phone to his ear, he heard David Chang's rushed voice, more serious than he had ever heard it before. We got a problem. It was an ordinary autumn morning. The workers and students who had toiled through the week were likely still sound asleep, enjoying a rare and precious weekend morning to sleep in. At that same moment, a piece of news was about to, and was destined to, shake the entire domestic internet to its core. That morning, the Apex Group released an official announcement. They declared two things. First, they were officially entering the microblogging market and developing their own platform, Apex Social. They were following right on the heels of Nexus's Weibo. They were about to stir up a storm in this new, white-hot internet battlefield, vying for the biggest piece of the pie. Second, the Apex Group announced it was investing in the Quad. They had entered into a deep strategic partnership. They would develop products together. And in one fell swoop, they announced a series of platform games, including Apex Farm and Apex Parking Wars. Although the official announcement was released quietly on a Saturday morning, and most of the nation's netizens, still lost in their dreams, had yet to see it, the few early risers who did notice it couldn't help but draw a sharp, cold breath. Their scalps tingled. A single thought appeared in their minds. The storm is coming. The internet is about to change forever. The Apex Group released its official announcement at 7:00 m. sharp. At 7:05 m. The Quad published a joint statement on its own website. At 7:13 m. David Chung, who had come into the Happiness headquarters on Wanning Road early on a weekend, saw the news before he could even take a sip of his freshly brewed tea. At 7:18 m. William Tion, the vice president of Nexus and head of the Weibo project, called David Chang's cell phone in a panic. At 7:24 m. Carl Carlson, the chairman of Nexus, called personally and spoke with David for a full 7 minutes. The specific contents of their conversation were confidential, but his tone was grim, tinged with a barely concealed, trembling rage. Before hanging up, the chairman of Nexus, a titan of the domestic internet, took a deep breath and said gravely, "Is the kid up yet? This kind of thing. It all depends on what he decides to do." At 7:31 m. After ending his call with Carl Carlson, David Chung dialed the number of his company's chief strategy officer. The moment the call connected, the hurried CEO of Happiness only had time for 3 words. "We've got a problem." They didn't go into much detail over the phone. After a brief conversation, Leo hung up and calmly finished the fried eggs and the rest of his breakfast. His expression showed no change. When a mistress of the singles slaughterhouse came downstairs, stretching lazily, he had already prepared another breakfast for her at the table. He greeted her with a smile, wrapped an arm around her waist, and bent down to give her a natural, affectionate good morning kiss on her soft lips. Even so, the girl's sharp senses picked up on a subtle shift in her boyfriend. Claire looked up at Leo. "What's wrong?" Leo smiled. "Just something at work. I have to go to the office in a bit." Claire tilted her head. "Is it urgent?" Leo nodded. "Pretty urgent." He didn't explain further. Claire didn't press him, either. She just asked, "Is there anything I can do to help?" Leo grinned. "No need. It's just a small thing. I can handle it." He was as calm and composed as ever, exuding an inexplicable air of reliability that could put anyone at ease. Claire looked up at her boyfriend's face, her eyes shining brightly. She could never get enough of his confident demeanor. She stood on her tiptoes and gave him a light kiss. "Then good luck. Come back as soon as you're done." As she spoke, a thought seemed to occur to her. A small smile played on her lips as she whispered in his ear, "When you get back, we can." Lao. Lao. He instantly let go of his wife. A young man must guard against the temptations of the flesh. "Bertha Sue, please have some self-respect." His composed aura shattered in an instant. He turned and bolted. Seeing her boyfriend's deliberately exaggerated escape, Claire nearly bent over laughing. She steadied herself against the dining table and called out with a smile, "Good luck, honey." From the doorway, Leo, without looking back, gave her an okay sign and shouted back with a laugh, "You know it." The autumn morning was bright and clear. Even the impending, murderous storm seemed to have been effortlessly scattered by the couple, vanishing without a trace. The taxi sped toward the city. Inside, Leo sat in the back, watching the scenery fly by, deep in thought. He recalled what David Chung had told him on the phone. The Apex Group was getting into the microblogging game. They were partnering with the Quad to launch a series of games like Apex Farm and Apex Parking Wars. The first part had happened in his previous life. Back in late 2008 and early 2009, Nexus and Apex had waged a fierce war over their respective microblogging platforms. Even the blatant plagiarism of Happiness games had a precedent. But perhaps because of his rebirth, the timeline had shifted slightly. Apex and the Quad, who should have had no connection, had now become strategic partners in this reality. However, while it was unexpected, it was also within the realm of reason. As someone who had been reborn, Leo wasn't unprepared for something like this. Nor would he panic like others might at such a shocking move from the Apex Group. In fact, even in his previous life, the battle between Apex and Nexus for microblogging dominance had ultimately been won by Nexus. And now, with him here, both Happiness' new strategic direction and the advice he had given Nexus would provide them with more than enough ammunition to withstand any malicious competition. They could stand firm in the face of the storm. So he wasn't worried about that. It just meant they had to prepare for a long, drawn-out battle with a powerful opponent. But that was a problem for later. The real reason he was rushing into the city this early in the morning was something else entirely. Because troubles never come one at a time. If the Apex Group's entry into the market and their partnership with the Quad was a long-term concern, there was another matter that was a short-term crisis. Half an hour later, on the second floor of the Happiness headquarters on Wanning Road, in the CEO's office, David Chung poured Leo a cup of hot tea and spoke in a grave tone. "We're being targeted by the Department of Commerce." The Department of Commerce, formerly the Ministry of Information Industry, had been restructured after 2008. In a few years, after 2011, the agency responsible for regulating websites and internet companies would become the Cyberspace Administration. But for now, the Department of Commerce held the power of life and death in this field. While this referred to the federal department, at the state and local levels, there were corresponding bureaus. According to David Chung, he had just received the notification that morning. The East Bay Commerce Bureau had called. They informed him that Happy Nest had numerous operational issues over the past 6 months and must prepare for an on-site audit by the relevant authorities. The official document that followed listed over 30 specific items, big and small. The language wasn't harsh, but it was formal and unforgiving. Sitting on the sofa, Leo narrowed his eyes. So, they're looking for trouble. The domestic internet in this era was still in a phase of wild, untamed growth. Rules and regulations were not yet clearly defined. The power of interpretation lay entirely in the hands of the authorities. If they wanted to turn a blind eye, they could let things slide. If they wanted to find fault, it was completely up to them. But in theory, Happy Nest had always tried to operate by the book since its launch, rarely crossing any lines. Even if one or two actions fell into a gray area, given Happy Nest's current status as a rising star in the internet industry, a source of pride for East Bay, it shouldn't be targeted by its own local authorities. Leo looked at David Chung. "Have you heard anything through the grapevine?" David Chung nodded, then shook his head, his voice heavy. "I have a decent relationship with one of the deputy commissioners of the Bureau, but he's being very tight-lipped this time. I asked around through several other channels, and I've only heard whispers that the order might have come from the Federal Department of Commerce. It wasn't the local bureau acting on its own. It involved their superiors at the federal level." Leo frowned. According to the principles of local jurisdiction, Happy Nest affairs shouldn't warrant the personal attention of a federal department. And in its 6 months of operation, Happy Nest hadn't made any powerful enemies in D.C. Unless, Leo's eyes narrowed sharply. David Chung took a sip of hot tea to soothe his dry throat and said in a low voice, "Could it be Apex pulling strings?" Leo didn't answer, but thoughtfully proposed another possibility. "A few months ago, didn't you receive a message from D.C.?" It was shortly after the East Bay Comic and Anime Fest, when the photos of the Aragorn and Arwen cosplay had gone viral. A message had come from D.C., telling Happy Nest to kill the topic and remove the trending photos. At the time, neither Leo nor David had paid it much mind. David Chung froze. Then his expression shifted to one of shocked realization. It's related to that. This time it was Leo who nodded, then shook his head. Hard to say. The Apex group, the Quad, or the mysterious figure from D. C. All of them had a motive. But the truth was still shrouded in fog, difficult to discern for now. And regardless of the truth, the current situation was urgent. David Cheng's brow was deeply furrowed, his worry palpable. For this to happen at such a critical moment, this is going to be a huge problem. The Apex Group's entry into the market meant that Nexus's Weibo would have to focus all its resources on the coming platform war. In the short term, they wouldn't be able to provide any support to Happy Nest as a strategic ally. And Apex's partnership with the Quad, launching a series of copycat games, was a direct attack on Happy Nest's core business. It was a vicious, potentially fatal blow. At such a critical juncture, Happy Nest was already stretched thin to try to fend off its rivals. If it was also bogged down by an audit from the Commerce Bureau, its attention and resources divided, it would be caught in a dire predicament, unable to defend itself on either front. Leo set down his teacup and stood up abruptly. Get all mid-level managers and above. We're having a meeting. A moment later, as the department heads and senior managers of Happy Nest sat grim-faced around the conference table, the company's two co-founders walked in. Everyone at the table shot to their feet. Mr. Wallace. Leo's gaze swept over the assembled team. He spoke calmly. Sit. I have a few things to say. The room fell silent. For the next 20 minutes, the only sound in the conference room was the voice of the chief strategy officer. Calm, composed, methodical. He laid out each task, each step of the plan, with clarity and precision, each part interlocking with the next. The initial shock, anger, and anxiety that had gripped the Happy Nest team began to subside. They grew calm, then resolute, then energized. When he had finished outlining the entire response plan, Leo took a cup of tea that Hannah Ling had thoughtfully handed him, took a sip to wet his throat, and looked at the team again. That's the basic plan. Any questions? The conference table was silent. No one spoke. Just as Leo nodded and looked to David Chung, ready to adjourn the meeting, a timid voice came from the end of the table. I have one. Leo turned. It was a young man in his late 20s, the deputy head of the operations department, a core member who had been with Happy Nest from the beginning. He had mustered his courage, raised his hand, and was looking at Leo. Mr. Wallace, I heard that we're being targeted by the Federal Department of Commerce this time. This crisis. Can we really get through it? The room fell silent once more. Everyone subconsciously held their breath, their eyes fixed on their CSO. Leo paused. He looked at the brave deputy head who had asked the question. Then his gaze slowly swept across the faces around the table. Hannah Ling, Penny Fong, Owen Wu. All of them were the elite generals who had fought alongside him for the past 6 months. And it wasn't just the managers in the room. When Leo turned his head slightly, his gaze passed through the conference room's glass door. He could see the employees in the main hall, craning their necks, trying to see what was happening, even though they couldn't hear the conversation. Every single one of them. Their faces were etched with tension, worry, hope, and expectation. They were waiting for an answer from the chief strategy officer they trusted most, an answer that would calm their fears. Feeling the weight of their gazes, the responsibility they carried, Leo smiled. Then he spoke, his voice calm and steady, just as it had been every time Happy Nest had faced a challenge in the past 6 months. He said the words that always had the power to steady their hearts. Leave it to me. The words were light as a feather, yet heavier than a mountain. It was nearly noon when he left the Happy Nest headquarters. The street was bustling with traffic. Leo didn't rush to hail a cab. Instead, he took a stroll down Wanning Road, walking along the street lined with golden autumn leaves, gathering his thoughts. After the meeting, he and David Chung had spoken privately in the CEO's office. They had further analyzed the local Commerce Bureau's provocative actions and reached a new conclusion. While the move was partly due to a directive from the federal department, it was also likely that the local bureau had its own subjective reasons for doing so. Happy Nest's explosive growth had made it a tempting prize. Anyone would be envious and want a piece of the pie. The City Department of Communications had tried the same thing before, only to be effortlessly shut down by Mr. Hayes, the governor's chief of staff, whom Leo had asked for help. But that incident had been handled quietly, without much fanfare. Afterward, neither Mr. Hayes nor the governor had made any further public statements of support for Happy Nest. As a result, no one in East Bay knew about their relationship. Even those who had their suspicions couldn't be sure. Now, after more than half a month, another city department couldn't resist making a move. Using the federal department as a pretext, they were testing the waters. If Happy Nest offered no resistance and simply accepted its fate, then the other wolves lurking in the shadows would not hesitate to pounce, tearing the company apart until not even scraps remained. In other words, the Apex Group's attack wasn't the real threat. It was this move from the federal level down to the local bureau that had truly pushed Happiness to the edge of a cliff. We can't just sit here and wait. That was the conclusion the two co-founders had reached in the CEO's office. Before he left, David Chung had stopped Leo and asked him how he planned to handle it. As he walked out the door, Leo had left him with a single sentence: throw one good punch to avoid 100 more. Snapping out of his thoughts, Leo pulled out his phone and dialed a number. The call connected quickly. A familiar, calm voice answered on the other end. "Hello." Leo smiled. "Mr. Hayes, do you have a moment?" He arranged to meet Mr. Hayes at a small, nameless diner in the city. When he arrived, he found that the governor's chief of staff was already there. Leo smiled and greeted him, taking a seat at the table. It was their third meeting, and a sense of familiarity had grown between them. They called a waiter over, ordered a few simple dishes, and started chatting. Leo didn't bring up the real reason for the meeting. Instead, it was Mr. Hayes who mentioned the joint announcement from the Apex Group and the Quad that he had seen that morning. He asked Leo for his opinion with genuine interest. Leo didn't hold back. He openly shared his analysis of the future competitive landscape of the domestic internet and explained Happiness strategies for dealing with it. He spoke with a calm and confident eloquence that left Mr. Hayes fascinated, occasionally slapping the table in approval, his admiration for the young man growing. The food arrived, and they continued their conversation over the meal, both thoroughly enjoying the exchange. But throughout the entire meal, Leo never once mentioned the issue with the local Commerce Bureau, and Mr. Hayes, as if completely unaware, never asked. It was only after the simple meal was finished and Mr. Hayes stood up to pay the bill that he seemed to remember something. He turned to Leo. "I heard the Commerce Bureau is giving you some trouble." He had finally asked. Leo's expression remained unchanged. He just smiled and nodded. "Yes, a directive from a higher authority. It's understandable. We'll cooperate." His words were calm and without a hint of complaint. Mr. Hayes looked at Leo deeply, a flash of appreciation in his eyes, and then he smiled. "I've been a bit busy lately, helping the governor with the transition, but the governor is aware of the situation. He asked me to pass on a message to you." Leo stood up, straightened his collar, and responded with formal, impeccable respect. "Please go on." Seeing this, Mr. Hayes smiled again and uttered a single, simple word: "Wait." And so they waited for a week. During that week, the Apex Group and the Quad, having announced their strategic partnership, launched a massive online marketing blitz. The hype surrounding their new ventures even seemed to eclipse that of Nexus's recently launched Weibo. At the same time, the copycat games they rolled out, Apex Farm and Parking Wars, created a frenzy on their own platforms. Many loyal users of Apex and the Quad, who had only heard of Garden Grab and Parking Wars on Happiness, eagerly signed up for the new games and played with gusto. The domestic internet was in an uproar. Many netizens condemned Apex for its shameless plagiarism. Die-hard fans of Garden Grab, led by a certain Isabella Zhao, were indignant, wanting to report them. But lawsuits over game plagiarism were lengthy and the outcomes uncertain. Moreover, Happiness had its own problems to deal with. Preparing for the impending audit from the city's Commerce Bureau was already consuming a great deal of their time and energy. Faced with such a blatant, targeted attack, Happiness' apparent inability to fight back led to rampant speculation. Many believed that the company, having grown too successful too quickly, had finally attracted unwanted attention. After this blow, it would likely face even more predatory attacks. Its fall seemed inevitable. It was amidst this storm of public opinion, as the rising star of the domestic internet seemed to be teetering on the brink of collapse, that in late November, the former party secretary of the Southern Province, Zhao Bojun, was officially inaugurated as the new party secretary of East Bay. And with that, amidst the wind and rain, East Bay's autumn welcomed its first clap of thunder. On his first day in office, Zhao Bojun personally presided over a meeting of the Municipal Standing Committee, conveying directives from the central government and outlining key work priorities. On his second day, he chaired an economic conference. He emphasized the future of East Bay's economic innovation and industrial upgrading, proposing strong support for the tertiary sector and technological advancement. On his third day, in the morning, he held a symposium with representatives from private enterprises, engaging in cordial conversation to understand their needs. In the afternoon, Zhao Bojun personally led a delegation to visit representative companies in the city's tertiary sector, focusing on the internet industry. And the very first company he visited was the Happy Nest headquarters in the small building on Wanning Road. Under a forest of camera lenses and flashing lights, Zhao Bojun and his entourage entered the second floor. They toured the various departments of Happy Nest, and with CEO David Chung as their guide, learned about the company's corporate culture and future vision. Before leaving, under the astonished gazes of countless officials and media reporters, the newly appointed top leader of East Bay extended both hands and warmly shook the hand of the Happy Nest CEO. In front of all the cameras, he smiled and delivered an 8-word commendation for the fledgling internet company that had been in business for just 6 months. Pioneers of technology, the standard for East Bay. His words were met with absolute silence. When the news of Secretary Zhao's visit spread throughout East Bay, his statement and those 8 words of praise sent seismic shockwaves through the city's political and business circles. The first internet company he personally visited, and those 8 words, they represented the attitude and stance of the new top leader of East Bay. Even without another word, it was enough to bring the chaotic frenzy to a dead stop. The vultures scattered in terror. That same afternoon, the City Commerce Bureau urgently rescinded its on-site investigation of Happy Nest. They swiftly issued a statement expressing their full support for Secretary Zhao's economic guidance and pledged to provide unwavering assistance to outstanding local internet enterprises, with Happy Nest as the prime example. Countless local media outlets reported on it, their praise flowing like a tide. In D.C., the Federal Department of Commerce remained silent, and that silence was, in itself, a retreat. That same night, it was said that the top executives of the Apex Group and the Quad held an emergency online meeting. In a state of shock and disbelief, they hastily adjusted their strategies. Many of the targeted plans they had prepared were abruptly suspended or canceled. For now, they were forced to retract their claws and observe cautiously. When a deliriously happy David Chung called Leo's phone, his voice bubbling with excitement as he shared the good news, Leo was sitting in a small pavilion in the garden of Berkeley's old campus, playing chess with the former university president, Dr. Alastair Finch. After hanging up, Leo put his phone away. Across from him, Dr. Finch glanced at Leo. "I've known your senior for many years. This is the first time I've ever seen him go to such lengths for something like this. My old face isn't valuable enough to make him help you this much. So, kid, what did you say to him when you met? How did you manage to talk him into it?" Even the former president of Berkeley and member of the National Academy of Engineering couldn't hide his astonishment. Leo paused. It wasn't just the old man. David Chung had asked him the same question on the phone. The memory resurfaced, and a small smile touched Leo's lips. "Nothing much. We just had a few cups of tea that weekend afternoon in the study of the governor's residence." He had handed over the document he had prepared, a detailed strategic plan for Happy Nest's future. His senior, the man who had not yet officially taken office, had taken it and begun to read. From building a public information platform and a disaster response system, to creating a mechanism to combat disinformation. From promoting national symbols to establishing East Bay's cultural identity. From a sustainable charity model to making Garden Grab a charitable endeavor, where for every 1,000 virtual cabbages harvested, the platform would donate 1 real fruit tree to an impoverished region. From supporting national low-carbon policies and creating a carbon credit system to a future plan for remote online tutoring through Happy Nest. As he read, Leo had the rare privilege of witnessing the man who would lead East Bay become visibly shocked, moved, and excited in a way he had perhaps never been before. And so, that led to the unprecedented 5 cups of tea that the great man had personally brewed for him, and to the heartfelt words he had spoken as he walked Leo to the door. "I agreed to meet you as a favor to Dr. Finch, but now it seems I owe Dr. Finch another favor. This document, it's excellent, far better than I could have ever imagined. I hope you're not just talking. I hope you can genuinely work toward this vision. Businessmen don't talk politics, but entrepreneurs should plan for the country and its people. Happy Nest is a good company, but I hope in your hands it can become a great enterprise. This path won't be easy, but you must strive. You won't be alone on this journey. As long as you stay the course, then for as long as I am in East Bay, this city will be your staunchest ally and support. Kid, you will bear more and more responsibility, so don't be in too much of a hurry. Walk a little slower, a little steadier. Perhaps one day, you will walk into a magnificent new world. Remember, a flowing river doesn't strive to be first. It strives to be endless." Late November, the autumn air grew colder. Everything returned to a state of calm. Happy Nest was no longer harassed by petty troublemakers, and work proceeded smoothly. At Mako Entertainment, the Heavenly Tactics project continued to advance, now in its final testing phase. In Northwood, the factory was mass-producing blockhead figurines, and the second batch of 50,000 had been shipped to East Bay. At Mia's maternity, Chloe Chu had renovated several of her stores, creating parent-child spaces for DIY figurine painting, and business was booming. Demand outstripped supply. On the street near Berkeley's old campus, the Blockhead Workshop, open for just over half a month, had become a must-visit spot for students from Berkeley and neighboring universities. The roommates from both dorms still occasionally came to help out. Lily Lou and Marco were still engaged in their secret, ambiguous flirtation. Tessa and Kevin were still arguing over product plans at Aria Perfumes, and the dedicated elevator at Wyatt's company still echoed with thuds and bangs from time to time. The security camera had yet to be fixed. As for the lethal couple, their lives had also returned to a peaceful, leisurely routine. Except, in the cooling autumn air of East Bay, the mistress of the single slaughterhouse unexpectedly fell ill. It came on suddenly, but not without warning. It was a Monday. East Bay was seeing its first autumn rain. That morning, Claire and her roommates from room 205 left for class without an umbrella, but a light drizzle was already falling. It was too late to go back to the dorm to get one without being late. Unlike the shameless, thick-skinned guys from room 520, the girls were reluctant to be tardy. Thinking the rain wasn't too heavy, they decided to just run for it. By the time they reached the classroom, they were all a bit damp. Claire thoughtfully reminded her friends to take off their wet jackets and use tissues to dry their hair and clothes. After class, at noon, the girls felt fine and went to the dining hall for a cheerful lunch. Their afternoon classes also went by without incident. However, the fan was on in their afternoon lecture hall, blowing a cool breeze. Quinn, Molly, and Jade didn't mind, but Claire felt a little uncomfortable, though she didn't say anything. It wasn't until after their last class on the way back to the dorm that Claire started feeling tired. She figured she had just woken up too early that morning and decided to take a nap when she got back. She slept fitfully until dinner time. When her roommates tried to wake her up to go to the dining hall, she tried to sit up but felt her face and body burning, her limbs weak and heavy. Quinn, Molly, and Jade knew something was wrong. They gathered around her bed and were shocked by what they saw. Claire's face was flushed and hot. Quinn carefully touched her forehead and recoiled, as if from an electric shock. "She's burning up." Molly started pacing in a panic, nearly dialing 911. Jade was the calm one. She went to her own cabinet and pulled out a first aid kit. In a flash, a thermometer, cooling patches, fever reducers, herbal cold remedies, and even a few ice packs appeared, as if by magic. "It's okay," she said. "It's probably just a cold. I'm pretty well stocked here. We could try one of these on Claire first." As she spoke, Jade produced a cloth pouch from somewhere, unrolling it to reveal a set of silver needles of various lengths and thicknesses. "I took an interest class in high school with an old traditional Chinese doctor. I learned a little bit about using acupuncture to reduce fevers." "Quinn?" ? "Molly?" The two girls stared dumbfounded. Even Claire, lying weakly in her bunk, almost didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Her voice was faint, but she managed to say, "It's fine. It's probably just a cold. Some medicine should do the trick." Her roommates did as she asked and made her a cup of the herbal remedy. Claire drank it and fell back into a deep sleep. Molly, Quinn, and Jade felt a little relieved. They left the dorm to get dinner, remembering to bring something back for their roommate. But half an hour later, when they returned with hot porridge, Claire was still asleep, her brow furrowed in discomfort. They checked her temperature again. She was even hotter than before. This time, the three of them really started to panic. While they scrambled to wake Claire up and help her get dressed to go to the campus health center, they quickly called Leo. When the call came, Leo was in a meeting at the Happy Nest headquarters on Wanning Road. Things at Happy Nest have been going smoothly lately, with the city's top leader personally endorsing them, flying the banner of pioneers of technology, the standard for East Bay. The company was getting the green light everywhere. Any department or official who had previously had designs on them was now kicking themselves, desperately trying to mend fences, terrified that a slow response would be seen as opposing the new governor. They could be fired for something as trivial as stepping into the office with their left foot first. Morale at Happy Nest was at an all-time high. The employees' admiration for their young Mr. Wallace had reached a new level. They were just short of worshiping him as a god. Leo didn't have time to worry about that. The promise he had made to his senior had been fulfilled on the governor's end, and now it was his turn to reciprocate. The strategic plans he had laid out for Happy Nest, focusing on charity and education, had to be put into action. The meeting had been going on until 6 or 7 in the evening. He was in the conference room with David Chung, assigning tasks to the company's mid and high-level managers. The next second, his phone rang. It was Quinn Liu. Leo was surprised. He answered the call. "Quinn, what's up?" He only needed to hear a few words from the other end before his expression changed completely. "Take her to the health center first. I'll be there in half an hour." "No, 20 minutes. He hung up. The next moment, under the watchful eyes of the company's top brass, Leo put his phone away and gave a decisive order. "David, you finished the meeting? My wife's sick. I have to go." Before the words had even left his mouth, he was already out the door and gone. The room, full of executives, was left stunned. Their first thought was, "Holy crap, how did he move so fast? Can he fly?" Their second thought was, he's so worried about his girlfriend being sick that he'd drop a meeting in the middle of it. Mr. Wallace is so devoted. The eyes of many of the female employees started to sparkle. Handsome, talented, and devoted. We love him even more. It was hard not to draw a comparison to the company's other co-founder. The team subconsciously glanced at their CEO at the head of the table. He's getting on in years, and we hear he's still single. A rather bleak picture. Feeling their gazes on him, David Chung felt a prickle of annoyance and snapped. "What are you all looking at me for? Let's continue the meeting." Translation: he's flustered. Leo burst out of the Happy Nest building and rushed to the street to hail a cab. It was still raining, and there were a lot of people trying to get a ride. A taxi pulled up, and another guy tried to get it at the same time as Leo. "Hey, I was here first," the guy yelled. "My buddies are waiting for me at the land center." Leo didn't even have time to argue. He yanked the door open and slid in. "To Berkeley's old campus, please. And step on it. I'm going to the health center. My wife is sick." The driver, a guy in his mid-20s, sat up straight in his seat. "You got it. Leave it to me." He turned and saw the other guy still trying to grab the door handle and glared at him. "He's going to save his wife. You're just a single loser going to a land center. What's your hurry? Get lost." Then he slammed his foot on the gas. The engine roared, and the taxi shot forward, leaving the other guy standing there in a daze. Not only had he lost the cab, but he had also been hit with a vicious emotional blow. The autumn rain fell, chilling his heart to the bone. Damn it. Do single guys even get insulted for trying to hail a cab now? The trip from his city back to Berkeley's old campus usually took at least 30 or 40 minutes. This time, urged on by Leo, the driver made it back in just 25. When they arrived, Leo tried to give the driver extra money to thank him, but the man waved it away with a cool gesture. "It was my pleasure." Then he sighed wistfully. "I had a love like that once." Leo paused. "You did?" The driver snapped back to reality. "Oh no, I mean I read about stuff like this in novels and always fantasized about it." Leo: "Right, okay. So this was the average single fan of web novels." He thanked the driver again and hurried out of the car, running through the drizzling night rain toward the campus health center. Inside the health center, in the first-floor waiting room, he finally saw his girlfriend. After calling him, the girls from room 205 had helped Claire get dressed and brought her over. Not just Molly, Jade, and Quinn, but also Marco, Leon, and Dylan from room 520 had come. Lily Liu, who had been busy with her family's collaboration with Nexus, but happened to be on campus, had also rushed over as soon as she heard. When they saw Leo, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. "Leo, you're finally here. Hurry, Claire's been asking for you." Leo greeted his friends and rushed forward. He finally saw Claire, sitting on a bench surrounded by everyone. She was awake, and seeing her boyfriend seemed to rally her spirits. She gave him a small wave. "You're back." The gesture looked a little clumsy. That was because she was wearing 2 or 3 jackets, gloves, a scarf, and earmuffs. The girls from room 205 had piled them on her, worried she would get colder. She was bundled up from head to toe like a little winter doll. Seeing that she was in good spirits, Leo felt a wave of relief. Then he couldn't help but be amused. "Isn't that a little much?" Claire smiled. Everyone was worried. They even stood around me in a circle to block the wind. It's really not that serious." Leo came over and knelt in front of her, taking her hand. "We'll let the doctor decide that. Your opinion doesn't count." Then he turned to his friends. "Have you seen a doctor? What do they say?" Lily Liu stepped forward with a smile. "We did. The doctor said it's seasonal flu. That's why the herbal remedies didn't work. But she just had a blood test, and they said it's not serious. She just needs to get in 4 drip." Leo nodded, feeling another wave of relief. Autumn was indeed flu season, but thankfully it was just the regular flu. On the way over, his mind had jumped to worse possibilities, like H1N1. Now that he thought about it, the H1N1 pandemic didn't really hit the southern part of the country until the fall of 2009. This was just a false alarm. A few minutes later, a nurse came over with the 4 bag. Leo helped his girlfriend take off her gloves and watched as the nurse skillfully inserted the needle into a vein on the back of her hand and taped it down. The 4 was hung, and the drip rate was set. The medicine flowed drop by drop through the tube and into the girl's body. Claire had been forcing herself to stay cheerful so as not to worry everyone. Now, she was starting to feel drowsy again and dozed off in her chair. Leo sat beside her, got a cushion from a nurse to prop behind her back, and let her head rest gently on his shoulder. The 4 fluid could make her feel cold, so he held her other hand to keep it warm. His care was meticulous and tender. He gently brushed a stray strand of hair from her forehead, his eyes filled with concern and affection as he looked at her tired face. The other friends were getting ready to leave. Seeing this scene, they were all moved. Leon and Molly glanced at each other, gently squeezed hands, and smiled happily. Quinn and Marco also made eye contact, then quickly looked away, pretending nothing had happened. But their bodies subconsciously drifted a little closer to each other. Dylan watched with envy and admiration, then turned to see Jade looking at him with great interest. She suggested, "I know a bit about using acupuncture for fevers. Want to try?" Dylan. A jolt of fear shot through him. He turned and fled. The roommates from both dorms quietly said their goodbyes to Leo and left. Lily Lou stayed a little longer. She went to the small convenience store next to the health center and bought 2 bowls of hot porridge and a few buns, bringing them back for Leo. "You haven't eaten, have you? Have a little something. When Claire wakes up, she can have some porridge too." Leo smiled and nodded, thanking her quietly so as not to disturb his sleeping girlfriend. Lily sat with him for a while, and they chatted in low voices about the recent turmoil involving the Apex group, the Quad, and Happy Nest. Lily looked at Leo with undisguised awe. "I knew you were impressive, but I never imagined you were this impressive." At the Nexus Gala at the Fairmont, she had already learned he was the CSO of Happy Nest, which had been shocking enough. But recently, seeing the news and hearing the discussions among her family elders, learning that the newly appointed party secretary of East Bay had so clearly taken a stand for Happy Nest, had left her completely floored. But then again, when it came to the young man in front of her, it all seemed perfectly reasonable. He had a way of making the impossible happen. Leo asked about her family's collaboration with Nexus. At this, Lily smiled. She said that thanks to Leo, the head of the Weibo project, William Tion, had been very accommodating and everything was going smoothly. Although she was busy, and it was her first time officially handling family business, which meant she was still a little clumsy at times, she had found some outside help to share the load. When he heard the name of her helpful consultant, Leo was a little surprised. "Clark." Lily nodded, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear with a smile. Hum. He graduated with a finance degree, right? We were chatting about it at a gathering last time, so I asked him to give me some advice. He's been a huge help. I was planning to take him out to dinner to thank him." "Dinner?" Leo instinctively glanced at the former girl in her familiar long dress and remembered their first few dinner dates. Seeing his look, Lily instantly knew what he was thinking. Her face was expressionless. "Don't worry. He doesn't mind that I'm too slow to get to the food while it's still hot." The night air in the campus health center smelled of alcohol and disinfectant. The lights were bright, a little too harsh for the patients resting in the waiting room with their 4 drips. When the roommates had come earlier, the thoughtful Molly had grabbed a hat from Claire's closet. She had left it for Leo before she left. It was the matching couple's hat they had bought on the street outside the East Gate during last year's Star Festival. It was a pink baseball cap with the letter S on it. Leo gently placed the hat on his sleeping girlfriend's head, pulling the brim down slightly to shield her from the light. In her sleep, Claire seemed to sense it. She shifted, her eyes fluttering open, and she habitually reached out for her boyfriend. Leo gently took her hand and whispered, "You're awake? Are you hungry? You didn't have dinner. Should I go heat up the porridge for you?" Still half asleep, Claire mumbled a groggy hum, her voice nasal from the cold. But then she instinctively shook her head and squeezed his hand a little tighter. "Don't want you to go." Her tone was sweet and clingy. The sick campus queen was clearly more dependent on her boyfriend than usual, a side of her he rarely saw. Leo couldn't help but smile, squeezing her hand in return. "I won't. The break room is right next door. I'll just use the microwave to heat up the porridge and buns. I'll be right back." He coaxed her gently. Claire, still in a daze, tilted her head as if considering it. Finally, with great reluctance, she mumbled another hum and loosened her grip slightly. "Then come back quick." Leo smiled and agreed. He pulled his hand away and carefully took off his own jacket, draping it over the hand with the 4 drip. Then he stood up, took the porridge and buns, and walked quickly to the break room next door. He quickly heated the food in the microwave and carried it back out. He looked up and saw that in the short time he was gone, his girlfriend had already dozed off again on the bench. Her body was turned to the side, her head resting on the cushion. The pink baseball cap was pulled low, hiding half her face, but still revealing her profile. Under the white fluorescent lights of the waiting room, her skin looked even more translucent, paler than usual, giving her a fragile, delicate beauty. Leo's gaze softened. He walked over with the food, but seeing her sleeping so peacefully, he couldn't bring himself to wake her. He decided to let her sleep a little longer. He sat down quietly beside her, placing the food in his lap and covering it with his jacket to keep it warm. But the autumn night was cool. After half an hour, the porridge was still warm, but the buns had started to get cold. He didn't want her to have to wait when she woke up, so he got up again, took the buns to be reheated, and tiptoed back to his seat. He did this several times. Claire slept soundly for an hour and a half, only waking up when a nurse came to change her forebag. She rubbed her eyes, looking at her boyfriend in a daze. How long was I asleep? Why didn't you wake me? Leo smiled. You were sleeping so peacefully, I wanted you to get some more rest. He handed her the porridge and buns. Here, eat something while it's hot. Claire nodded and took the food. She noticed that it was still steaming and looked up at him inquisitively. Did you go heat up again? Leo grinned. Nope, I'm too lazy for that. I only heated it up once. She ended up needing 2 4-bags at the health center. By the time she was done, it was late at night. There were no empty beds, and even if there were, it wouldn't have been comfortable. Without much thought, Leo hoisted Claire onto his back and carried her out of the health center, heading for the east gate to catch a cab home. The late autumn wind was cool and carried the damp, earthy scent of the recent rain. His girlfriend's soft, warm body was pressed against his back, her faint fragrance filling the air. Leo walked with careful, steady steps, feeling the warmth radiating from her, his heart calm and peaceful. It felt as if their destinies were especially intertwined tonight. The girl on his back was the one person he would cherish and care for his entire life. As it happened, Claire, lying on Leo's back, felt the same way. She wrapped her arms around his neck, snuggled closer, and mumbled in his ear, her voice still thick with congestion. Leo, want to play a round tonight? He almost didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Play a round of what? You're sick. You need a rest. Be careful, or I'll drop you. Of course, playing around was just a joke. When they got back to the LNS house, and her boyfriend helped her change in her nightgown and get into bed, Claire was already so tired she could barely keep her eyes open. But she still remembered to tell Leo to go wash up and sleep in the guest room downstairs. The flu was contagious. If they slept in the same bed, they might both be sick by morning. And they certainly couldn't rely on the parrot to take care of them. So, even though she was sick and weak and wanted her boyfriend by her side, Claire made the sensible choice. Leo just nodded. All right, I'll stay until you're asleep, then I'll go wash up. Already comfortable under the covers, Claire forced her sleepy eyes open and looked at her boyfriend, who was tucking her in. She said in a small, stuffy voice, Leo, you were very good today. Why get better? I'll reward you with a big game. The person tucking her in was once again at a loss for words. Just go to sleep. There was no reply, only the sound of even, steady breathing. He turned to look and saw that his girlfriend was already fast asleep, hugging her pillow. Leo smiled. He didn't leave right away. He turned off the main light, leaving only the soft, dim glow of a night light. He pulled a chair over to the bed and sat down, watching his girlfriend sleep. He watched the gentle rise and fall of her chest, the flutter of her eyelashes with each breath. The scene was similar to the one at a motel last year, when she had been drunk. She had been asleep in bed, and he had been watching over her. But today was different. Back then, watching her sleep, he hadn't been sure of his feelings, or hers. He had wanted to reach out, but had held back. Now, he knew with absolute certainty what they meant to each other. He understood their place in each other's lives. Watching her quietly, Leo felt a soft warmth spread through his chest, a feeling of contentment and happiness. Just then, the fat-headed parrot, half asleep, fluttered into the room. It saw its male owner sitting in a chair by the bed instead of sleeping with the mistress, and squawked in surprise. Not allowed in bed. Did you do something wrong? The tender atmosphere shattered instantly. Leo swatted the clueless bird away. Get out. The next day was Tuesday. In the morning, Leo woke up early in the downstairs guest room. After washing up, he went to the kitchen to make breakfast. He had just finished plating the warm oatmeal and side dishes and was about to go upstairs to get his girlfriend when he heard footsteps on the stairs. He looked up to see the mistress of the singles slaughterhouse, already washed and dressed, coming downstairs. He was surprised. Up so early? You didn't sleep in? Claire shook her head with a smile. I slept enough yesterday. Any more, and I'll turn into a little pig. After the 4-drip last night and a long, full sleep, the campus queen was looking much better this morning. She still had a slight cough and a stuffy nose, but for the most part, she had recovered. Leo went to her and placed a hand on her forehead. Still a little warm. You should skip class today and rest at home. Take some medicine, and you should be fine in a day or two. Hearing her boyfriend's instructions, Claire nodded obediently. Okay, she had already asked her roommates to let her professors know she would be absent. After nodding, she looked at Leo with puppy dog eyes. What about you? Leo smiled. I'll take the day off too, to keep you company. Tuesday was mostly large, public lectures where they didn't take attendance. And even if they did, the guys from room 520 were seasoned pros. If they had learned one thing in college, it was how to answer for someone else during roll call. Marco, in particular, was a legend. Last year, he had once successfully answered for 8 guys from 2 different dorms. The professor had been calling names from the podium without looking up. In less than a minute, Marco had shifted positions 4 times and altered his voice 7 times. The professor hadn't suspected a thing. His vocal skills were astounding. He had become a god in a single battle. As for his afternoon marketing class, that wasn't a problem either. At first, the marketing professor had called on him every day, disappointed in Leo Hammer Wallace for his apparent lack of focus. But ever since he found out that Leo was the mastermind behind the Blockhead Workshop, which he considered a stroke of genius, his attitude had done a complete 180. He now openly declared that Leo Wallace is the most gifted student I have ever taught, and I knew from his first day that this kid had a special talent. What was that about daydreaming in class? His star pupil wasn't daydreaming. He was engaged in profound strategic thinking for his business. Who knew what brilliant new marketing plan was brewing in that clever head of his? So, skipping a class was no problem at all. The professor would probably sign him in himself while declaring with admiration, as expected of my prized student. He must be out in the world, gaining practical experience. The rest of you slackers should learn from him. And so, the master and mistress of the single slaughterhouse had a rare, quiet day to rest and spend time together at home. After they finished breakfast at the dining table, Reasonable came flapping over. The parrot, aware that its mistress was sick, held a box of medicine in its claws and offered it to Claire. Queen Mom, medicine, medicine. It was the medicine from a campus health center. Claire took it and praised the parrot with a smile. Reasonable, you're so considerate. Before the parrot could puff up its chest in delight, Leo chimed in with a nod of agreement. Yes, so considerate. When you get better, you should bake him some cookies as a reward. Leo Hammer Wallace, who never held a grudge. He was definitely not still bitter about a certain stupid bird ruining the mood last night. Claire seemed to consider it, but Reasonable was already horrified. That's quite all right. The next second, it turned and fled. After making its offering, it had its own business to attend to. As the weather cooled, the great parrot had been inspired to do some home improvement on its cage. It was busy hopping around the house and yard, picking up twigs and scraps of paper, adding them to its cage with great enthusiasm. It was a labor of love. After breakfast, Leo poured Claire a glass of hot water and made sure she took her medicine. Then he took the dishes to the kitchen to clean up. When he came back out, Claire had taken her medicine and was curled up on the couch, idly flipping through a book. The morning sun was bright and warm. In just a few minutes, the medicine had made her drowsy again, and she had fallen asleep on the couch, the book resting on her lap. Leo smiled at the sight. He walked over, sat down on the edge of the couch, and gently took the book from her hands, placing it aside. He had intended to carry her upstairs to her bed so she could sleep properly, but as he placed the book on the coffee table, his eyes caught something. The zipper on Claire's small shoulder bag was open, and the corner of a small notebook was sticking out. The cover looked familiar. Leo picked it up, and a smile spread across his face. The Leo Wallace Strategy Guide, Vol. 2. An old friend. This little notebook had played a key role in them finally getting together at the old stone chapel on Serenity Peak last year. He hadn't realized Bertha Sue still kept it around. Curious, Leo opened the notebook and flipped through a few pages. The last time he had seen it, the entries had stopped just before he confessed his feelings. The last line had been, "But that's okay. I can wait." He turned the page. The next page had just 2 lines. No need to wait anymore. Mission accomplished. Leo was amused. He remembered his confession in the courtyard of the chapel. A wave of nostalgia and warmth washed over him. He continued flipping. Probably because she had successfully conquered her target, Claire's entries became less frequent. She mostly jotted down little moments from their daily life, the lines overflowing with happiness. Further on, the notebook turned into more of a diary, with many entries about her work. If it fell into the hands of one of Sterling Holdings' competitors, it would be a treasure trove. Leo, of course, didn't care about that. He skimmed a few more pages before closing the notebook and placing it back on the coffee table. Then he gently scooped his sleeping girlfriend into his arms and carried her upstairs. After they had gone, the living room fell quiet again. Bright autumn sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating tiny dust motes dancing in the air like specks of light. A breeze rustled through the yard and slipped through the door, causing the white sheer curtains to billow gently. The breeze flipped the pages of the notebook on the coffee table, opening it to a section Leo hadn't seen. A small sticky note, tucked between the pages, fluttered out. On it was the familiar handwriting of the mistress of the house. It seemed to be a hastily jotted-down question about a work-related puzzle. To anyone else, it would be meaningless. Happy Nest, CSO. In my past life, was there such a person? With a flutter of wings, the parrot landed on the coffee table, drawn by the sound. It cocked its head, peering curiously at the note. Squawk.